Hello and welcome to the Weekly Stuff Podcast with Jonathan Lack.
And Sean Chapman.
We are here to talk about stuff. This week on the show, a veritable cornucopia of news from the entertainment industry. From Sony buying the developer of Spider-Man, to Sony breaking up with Disney over Spider-Man, to Disney announcing a whole lot of shit at D23, including all the stuff they're going to have on their streaming service so they can continue world domination. We have a whole thing that I'm going to do on all the people who have come in and out of the Uncharted movie because they're still trying to make that Uncharted movie, and that got fucked up again this week. There's a new Matrix sequel on the way. Truly, Sean, I don't think outside of E3 we've ever had this much news on one outline.
Oh God, no, definitely not. I mean, you emailed your outline to me, because when we have podcasts that are like very straightforward, I don't usually need to see the outline. This outline is 7 pages and 3,742 words. A lot of entertainment news happened, it turns out.
Too much, and you know, obviously we have all the D23 stuff kind of doubled the length of the outline, but it was already plenty long before that because and you were asking, Sean, is this normal at the end of August? I don't think so. This is a very weird time to just have everything dump all at once, but it's how it goes, I guess.
Yep.
All right, let's do a little bit of housekeeping really quick. Wanted to remind you all that Weekly Suit Gundam is out now as its own separate podcast. If you have any Gundam fans in your life, you want to recommend the show. It's a little more manageable of a way to access the show because it's just the Weekly Suit Gundam episodes and not 298 other episodes of Weekly Stuff. And that is out now live on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, a lot of other places. If there is a podcast platform it is not out on yet, it is coming there. It just takes time. So all of those are out. If you like Weekly Suit Gundam, please subscribe, rate, and review because that would do a lot to help push that podcast and hopefully bring some new fans into the fold and maybe over to the main podcast as well. We're really happy with that. I know we did not have a main Weekly Stuff episode last week, but we did have a new Weekly Stuff, Weekly Suit Gundam in the main feed and in the other feed as well, and that was our episode on Zeta Gundam, which I thought was a really good episode, Sean.
Yes, that was fun to record. It's fun to do the big episode that just covers a whole series broadly. It was a fun contrast to doing the kind of breaking the show up into chunks like we did with the first show.
Yep, and we'll have more of that soon because I'm about to finish Double Zeta Gundam, so we're going to have to do an episode on that, Sean.
Yes, we will, and then I can finally watch Char's Counterattack again, which I've been really wanting to watch that movie again. But then we started doing that podcast, and I was like, well, I should probably wait until we're going to do the podcast for me to watch the movie.
Luckily, I've been watching the show very fast.
Yes, so I will not have to wait for very long.
Yes, so anyway, that'll be coming soon, but I think we're happy to be doing that as well. But I am also happy just to be back with a big main podcast this week. And this is episode 298, Sean.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Which means we are getting ever closer to episodes 299 and then 300. For episode 300, we are planning to do a redux of our top 10 favorite TV shows of all time, which was an early podcast, and just like for episode 200, we did our movies, 250, we did our games. We're going to complete the trifecta with TV shows, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, don't have my list ranked yet, but I have my 10. I know what my 10 are. I just need to have them duke out in the arena of science to figure out which one is objectively the best TV show.
I have 11, and I have to figure out how to cut it to 10, and that's a really hard place to be in. But yeah, we will get there. But I also wanted to mention episode 299, because, Sean, I actually have not talked to you about this off the air yet, but I think you'll like my instinct for this. For episode 299, so the next regular episode of the show, I would like to do a topic that's just kind of reflective, something we've never really done, just about podcasting.
Okay.
And that we've done this for almost 10 years now, and just, kind of talk about what the experience has been like, what we've learned from it, how things have changed, what it does for us, just those sorts of things. And why I'm mentioning this on the air is I would love any comments or questions from listeners for episode 299 just about the show. So it doesn't have to be about the kinds of, like, you know, people like asking us questions about what's in the news this week. Just sort of like any questions you have about the podcasting process, about how to do a podcast if you have questions about that, just anything like that. I think that would be a fun topic to do. And episode 299, I don't know, it just feels like this weird threshold where 300 is kind of we'll have milestones past that, but 300 has always to me felt like the milestone of milestones.
Sure.
Because once you get past that, it's just sad, frankly, right?
Sure, yeah. Especially, I think it's that, like, the 300 to 400, like, that's, like, 400 is not cool. 500 is cool, but it's a long way to 500 past 300, right?
Yeah. You know, I remember when The Simpsons did their 300th episode, and that was a big deal, but they recently did their 600th, and I think everyone was just like, oh, God, that's too many episodes, Simpsons. So, you know, maybe we're on that path. But I think that would be a fun topic for 299, hopefully next week or the week after. We'll see when we get there. But that's one idea I had. So if people have questions, go ahead and send those into the show. I would be interested to hear them.
Yeah, me too. I think that's a good idea, and it would be a fun podcast to do.
Yes. So, let's do some stuff, Sean. I'm curious what you've been up to. I'll start there. What have you been up to, Sean? Because we have actually not recorded anything new in 2 weeks. We've had episodes, but that's because you've started a new job. It's been busy, I assume.
Yes.
How have you been?
Yeah, so, I mean, my main stuff is just job stuff, because, as a recap, I got hired at the school that I student taught at, like, 3 days before the school semester started. And so, well, like, where you had 2 days that were teacher-only days, and then the Wednesday of that week was the first week that students showed up. So I've done 2 full weeks now of teaching, and I've been very busy. One, because it's just takes a lot of time to try to figure out what the fuck you're going to do when you're teaching. And then 2, it turns out that when you're, 1, hired right before the semester starts, and 2, you're hired the first year that district is implementing new, like, back-end server and tech stuff for onboarding new employees, that it takes a long time for certain, like, tech things to catch up. So it's like I had to basically teach 3 full days without being able to print anything of my own volition. So I had to, like, go to other teachers and beg them to print off, like, 90 copies of my syllabus. And stuff like that. And I had to go ask them in person because I didn't have an email for 2 days that I could use at the school. And that kind of, so it has it has been a rough and wild 2 weeks that all of that stuff, the technical stuff, has mostly settled. So now I shouldn't have to worry about any of that. But that means that I have not had a huge amount of time for, like, I haven't gotten much further into Dragon Quest Builders 2. I really want to get back to that game and finish it. But I have found just enough time, Jonathan, to take a little brief trip down to my beta corner.
A doop 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 Sean's beta corner. A doop doop.
Hello and welcome to Sean's Beta Corner. I'm Sean, and this is my beta corner, where you check out the latest and greatest in the hot world of video game betas. I think this is technically an alpha. I don't remember how they're marketing it. It doesn't matter either way because the game's out in like 2 months, so it's neither of those. It's called
Sean's Alpha Corner sounds like a terrible, like, subreddit of racists.
Yes, no, yeah, we're not going there. We're staking in the beta corner, but the beta corner will accept video game alphas as well. Call of Duty Modern Warfare, the latest Call of Duty game that's coming out this October, I think, or maybe early November. Had, like, just sort of dropped out of nowhere an alpha. Like, I actually learned that it was live from a student that was talking about it, and I was like, oh shit, I guess I should probably check that out. That seems like you don't even have to pre-order anything. It is just, I know for sure it's on PS4. I assume it's on the other platforms as well. You can just download this alpha. It's still live, and it is really good. It's really, 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 really good. Basically what the alpha is it is one mode that they've added a variation of today. That is a mode that is, I think it's new for Call of Duty. It's basically a 2v2 mode where you spawn on a very, very small symmetrical map. It is round-based, so you basically have 1 life, and whichever team eliminates the other 2 team enemies first, they win the round, and I think it's first to 6 rounds. And you switch sides like every 2 rounds or so. And then you also, every other round, you get a different loadout of weapons. So round 1 you might have like an AK-47 and a pistol, and then in round 3 it will switch to like a bolt-action sniper rifle and a shotgun or something like that. But everyone has the same guns every time they come in for that round. And so it's an interesting mode that I think is a weird mode to choose to show off the game for the first time that people are playing it, because it's very, very intense. It is, if you don't know what you're doing, you're just going to get killed immediately, and then the round is over because it's a lives-based system. So it's not as kind of like carefree as team deathmatches in Call of Duty, where you just run out and get killed and respawn immediately and just have a good time. It's a little bit more thoughtful and tactical than that, which I wish that there was maybe a little bit more of a like just kind of fuck around mode that was in the alpha. But once you get into it and you play a couple of rounds and you get a feel for it, the like core gameplay stuff that they have done for Modern Warfare is really phenomenal, and it is a huge step up for Call of Duty in a way that feels like, honestly, it feels like the jump from Call of Duty 2 to 4 again. Like, it feels like they have finally made another big leap just in terms of the core, like, feel of moving and aiming, and the, like, kind of just the game feel and presentation of the game feels, like, significantly updated. And it no longer feels like, oh, this is just, we have kept on bolting things onto Call of Duty 4 for 10 years, which is basically what every single Call of Duty game has felt like since Call of Duty 4 came out. There is a significant amount of weight to the way the character moves. There's a lot of care and attention made to like first-person animation kind of stuff. The way that the character's arms and gun will bob based on how your character's moving and ducking and jumping and stuff like that is very, again, it conveys a lot of weight and sort of presence in the world and in the game. The sound design is really, really well done, and it's the first game in a long time I can think of where like listening for footsteps is a significant component of you being able to perform well in the game, which is partially a thing for like how intense the mode is, but also they have just really kind of dialed in their sound design to, one, make the weapons sound incredibly explosive and powerful, but then all the sort of like ambient noises of running around, jumping, crouching, all of those are really distinct, and you can pick them out of the audio really well. And so that is a really important way to kind of gain sort of environmental and situational awareness of what's happening around you, because there's no radar and there's no map, at least in this mode. I don't know if that will be true for the rest of the game. And so all those kinds of elements make the game feel slower paced, much more tactical, much more just kind of invigorating, and it just feels like Call of Duty has stepped up its game and reassessed its sort of fundamental presentational and feel aspects in a way they have not since 2000. It's literally 2007, and it is something I've been waiting for this franchise to do for a very, very long time. And so I have played like probably 3 or 4 hours of this alpha, even though it's only one mode and there's like 3 maps. There's not a huge amount of content in the alpha, and it's not even a mode that I think I am like inherently very fond of. I just find like the feel of playing the game is really, 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 really fucking fun, and I'm having a great time with it.
Awesome. I knew that they had put out this alpha because it was announced at Gamescom. I thought about putting it on the outline, but I thought Sean's gonna do a beta corner on this, so you know, after 10 years of podcasting, I know we know each other.
Yes.
So I also did not check it out yet because I was busy keeping up with all this other fucking shit. But how has the reaction to it been? You've been very positive on it. Have you seen what the general reaction to it is?
I think most people are very positive on it. I think there's like the split that happens is, I think that there are a lot of people that just don't like the mode at all, which I get. Like I think this mode would be a lot of fun if I had someone that was like, here's my Call of Duty buddy that like just us two would play this mode together, because I like to play team doubles in Halo 3 back in the day a lot. So I think a 2v2 modes can be really fun, but it is not a good mode for like, I just want to dump in by myself, just load in with like random people online and play a couple of matches, which is how I usually play Call of Duty, and I think how a lot of people play Call of Duty. And for that, this mode is not suited to that kind of play. And so I think there are people that are frustrated by that element, but I think everybody is extremely impressed with the way the game feels and plays, because that is, I think, kind of unambiguously just, it's so much better than what Activision has done with Call of Duty in a very long time.
Well, that's awesome, because Call of Duty, like, because I asked about the reaction just because Call of Duty games in recent years have had very divided reactions from the fandom, you know?
Yeah.
And it sounds like people, like, because this is not the first I've heard about this game possibly being something special. I think journalists who have had hands-on times with it at, like, E3 and stuff have been impressed. So definitely good to have it on the radar. I will say, Sean, I've been keeping an eye on, like, my video game calendar for the rest of the year. Mm-hmm. And as soon as you said, this game's really good, I went inside, I went, fuck. Because, like, there's just so much shit coming out. And I'd always like to check out Call of Duty. I just kind of wish Call of Duty games came out in, like, June or something, so that I would have time to play them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get it. And with Modern Warfare, like, the thing that is still hanging that I obviously can't, like, advocate for is, like, for the full game, I have no idea what the campaign is going to be like, if the campaign would be any good. And I'm also just very curious what the, like, structure and model of the multiplayer is going to be like, because I'm hoping it does a little bit more of a, like, back to basics kind of thing, and doesn't go. Certainly don't think it's going to go for any kind of, like, hero mode thing that, like, Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4 have you, like, pick hero characters that have powers like almost like Overwatch. Like, I don't think they're going to do anything like that, but I hope they also just stay away from the ridiculous number of different, like, here's, like, 1 million different guns with 1 million different attachments and all of that. Like, I hope they kind of pare it down more to the basics and the essentials, because if they do, which I think would be in keeping with the spirit of the way the game feels to play, if they do that, I can definitely see myself getting hooked on the multiplayer later this year, which would be fun, because I haven't played a Call of Duty game's multiplayer seriously since, like, Advanced Warfare, which has been, that's game's like 5 years old at this point. So it'd be cool to get back into Call of Duty, because I used to really like playing the multiplayer a lot, and then they've just kept on doing stuff with the multiplayer that never interested me.
Exactly. So I've been playing a couple different games. I've played more Dragon Quest Builders 2 myself, Sean, because I finally tore myself away from Fire Emblem. So I'm up to I got to the end of the third big island, the Moonbrook Island.
Okay, you're a little bit further than me then, because I've not quite finished up that island.
Yeah. That island frustrated me in places a little bit, but I also thought it had some really good stuff. So, but still a very good game. Definitely recommend it. I've played the new Yu-Gi-Oh game on Switch, which is not a fully new Yu-Gi-Oh game. It's the one that came out on PS4 and Xbox like 3 or 4 years ago, called Legacy of the Duelist, but now it's, like, updated because it's got all the, like, current rules which have changed, because there's been a whole new Yu-Gi-Oh show in the time intervening. And really all I have to say about that is that they put that game out physically, and I realized, so I was buying a Yu-Gi-Oh game on a cartridge for a single-screen Nintendo handheld. The last time I bought a Yu-Gi-Oh game, I believe, was on a cartridge for a single-screen Nintendo handheld. Which I
can say that for me, the only time I bought a Yu-Gi-Oh game is for the Game Boy Advance. I think that's the only one I had, and I played a lot of it back in the day.
Oh, Yu-Gi-Oh! In video game form is super fun. Like any trading card game, because you just get everything, and you can kind of play to your heart's content. And what I do love is how much this game plays like the GBA games. Like, literally, it has the same button controls. Like, all my muscle memory for moving around the board is the same. Although, one nice thing is if you play it handheld, they do have touchscreen controls for everything, which not enough Switch games do. Even, like, first-party Switch games often forget that the Switch has a touchscreen, and sometimes it's nice to just be able to, like, boop, 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 and touch it around. So anyway, but I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about 2 movies I saw this week. All right. One about the movie itself, and one more about something I did with the movie. The movie itself is, I saw the new horror movie that came out this week, Ready or Not. If you've seen, have you seen ads for this, Sean?
No, I have not.
It's really good. I think you would like this. Everyone should see it. I don't know how it did at the box office this weekend. I'd have to look that up. But it was very well reviewed and had kind of been on my radar because I liked the trailer when I saw it with other movies. But the whole premise of Ready or Not is there is this young woman played by Samantha Weaving, but she looks exactly like Margot Robbie, and they are both Australian, born like a year apart. So it's like they should play sisters in a movie or something. But anyway, she plays a young woman who is marrying this dude, and they're going to, like, his family's mansion because his family's very rich, and there's this tradition that when someone marries into the family, they have to play a game because the family, like, makes board games and stuff. And they draw a card to decide what game they're going to play. And if the spouse draws the hide and seek card, then what happens is they have to hide, and the rest of the family tries to kill them to fulfill a blood oath they made with like an evil ghost 200 years ago to ensure their wealth. So it is like a very send up of the crazy 1% horror movie. But the whole plot is that, of course, she has to hide while this evil rich family is trying to hunt her down and kill her. And the highest praise I can give it is that this movie is full on Sam Raimi-esque in terms of how well it blends horror and comedy. Because there are plenty of horror comedies that are funny, but are not really scary. They might just be kind of gross. I think Ready or Not is really scary in parts. It's very tense at the very least. And if you have any fear of, like, bodily horror, like people getting cut or impaling things on nails, this is a very scary movie, and it's really good at that. It is also screamingly funny in places, and it is often very funny and very scary in the same places in a very symbiotic way. And obviously the best person who's ever done that is Sam Raimi, right?
Yes, yeah.
Because I think that's an underrated thing about Evil Dead 1 and 2 is that they are funny. They're also fucking scary, and especially Evil Dead 1, obviously. But, like, he's very good at that, and I think this movie has that similar command of those dual tones. Samantha Weaving, who plays the main character, has that Bruce Campbell quality where you can just throw so much abuse at this person and, like, mangle them in all these ways, and they'll be really good at that. And then they will come back with, like, a kiss-off line or a one-liner or just an exasperated moment that's very funny. And I think that's a really rare talent. So she's a huge... I'm sure she has been in other things. This is the first major movie I've seen her in. Very much a discovery out of that. The whole cast is great. It's an incredibly well-made film. Just, I think, like, the cinematography has this great sense of low light and texture on this internal kind of gothic mansion. It's 90 minutes, and it is fucking tight 90 minutes. It's got a great ending. I really, really liked this movie. I hope it does well. It is part of, like, I think here's how I know we are in some kind of horror renaissance in American film, is that I have been seeing, like, 1 or 2 horror movies every few months, and I'm not someone who grew up watching horror at all, because I grew up in the mid-2000s when all we had was Saw and Hostel and shit.
Yeah.
So, like, we are in a good era for this, because it's not my genre. I don't, like, go out of my way to seek it out, but, like, this looked good. It was one of the most fun times I've had at the movies in recent memory, so I recommend it.
Awesome. Yes, I will try to check that out at some point. I usually don't go to the theater for horror, so I'll probably wait for it to come out on video or streaming or whatever will happen to movies these days. But
exactly. Well, however you watch it, I would just recommend it because it is a lot of fun. I also saw this new a movie called Blinded by the Light, which if you haven't heard of, this was, I think, it came out at Sundance at one point, kind of an indie hit, and it is, it's by I forget his name now, but it's by the director of Bend It Like Beckham, and it is the story of this young British boy of Pakistani origin. His family is Pakistani, and it's in the 1980s, and, you know, he has a very, like, strict family upbringing, and he's kind of outcast at school and all this stuff, doesn't quite know his place in the world, and he discovers the music of Bruce Springsteen, and the music of Bruce Springsteen really helps him, like, kind of center his life and give him inspiration. And it's based on the memoir of an actual journalist who, this is his, like, true life story about how Bruce's music in the 1980s really helped him, like, overcome some of his, like, family situations and stuff. Really sweet movie, really nice film. If you don't know this about me, Bruce Springsteen is, like, my personal god, you know? Mm-hmm. Like he is to me what Jesus is to Christians, I assume. But anyway, I love Bruce Springsteen. I was kind of the target audience for this movie because I also had a similar, like, conversion to Springsteenism in my high school years. As you know, Sean, because I was probably annoying about it.
Sure, yeah, I accepted it.
I like that. There was just this, I said that, and on the other side of the screen, I just saw this slow nod from Sean. It was good. But anyway, so the movie is good. I don't really want to talk about the movie, though. I want to talk about how, because this movie came out, like, Bruce Springsteen was very open with the production of the movie. Like, he gave them a lot of his music and some stuff that has not been released. And one of those things that is on the soundtrack is a song called I'll Stand By You. And it is the first official release of this song. This song had been bootlegged before, but it had not been put out officially or in, like, a fully, like, mixed master recording. And why this song is significant is because this song has the most amazing history of any song in Hollywood history, because it is a song Bruce Springsteen, the boss, wrote and recorded unsolicited for inclusion in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the first Harry Potter movie.
Of course.
And this had been a rumor for years. So if you don't know, the first Harry Potter movie was 2001. So this is 18 years ago now. And years later, it came out in like rumor form that Bruce Springsteen wrote a song for Harry Potter. And I know I, at least, thought it was a joke for a long time. Like, that sounded so crazy it couldn't possibly be true, that like one of the most American recording artists would record a song for one of the most British film series. But eventually, like, there was enough of this rumor mill going around that Chris Columbus, the director of Harry Potter, came out and said, no, this happened. The song was called I'll Stand By You, and he wrote an entire essay for Backstreets.com, which is the biggest Springsteen fan publication. It was a magazine in print from, like, the 1980s to now, but it's also a magazine with, like, a forum and stuff. And Columbus wrote to them and wrote this long email about how he himself is a huge Springsteen fan. He used Springsteen music in a lot of his earlier movies, like, did he do Ferris Bueller? No, that's anyway.
That's Hughes.
That's John Hughes, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. He did. I know he did several teen comedies in the 80s. The Home Alone movies use it a little bit, I think. But anyway, so he had used Springsteen music before. He gets the Harry Potter job, and Springsteen, I guess, knew Columbus liked him because Columbus had used existing music in other movies. And Springsteen's daughter, who is about our age, Sean, she was born in the early 90s, so she would have been like the prime age for Harry Potter then, was really into Harry Potter. And Springsteen learns they're making a movie. And he said, oh, my daughter loves Harry Potter. The director is a fan of mine. This would be a cool opportunity to get a song in a movie, I guess. So Springsteen wrote and recorded, in secret, a song called I'll Stand By You. And he sends the song on CD to Warner Brothers to Christopher Columbus. And Columbus gets it and is very excited for a moment because he's like, oh my god, Bruce Springsteen wrote a song for my movie. It was like he explains in the essay, this is like his dream. And then he becomes really sad for a moment, realizing, but I can't possibly fucking use this. So like they did do a test where he laid the song in over the final reel of the movie, because the intention being it would play during the final scene into the end credits, and that would be the big Bruce Springsteen song. And Columbus, like, watched it a couple times with this sinking feeling of, like, this doesn't work. John Williams had already scored the entire movie, so he would have to kick John Williams' music out of the end of the movie, which he thought would really piss off John Williams, which it probably would for good reason, right? And he also, and this is my favorite quote from Columbus on this, is he said, we had taken great care to cast exclusively British actors in Harry Potter, which would mean Bruce Springsteen would be the first and only American voice in the movie. So he couldn't do it. And apparently Columbus wrote like a 20-page handwritten letter to Bruce explaining the decision, being like, this was so nice of you, but like, here are all the reasons we can't use it. I'm so sorry. Because it's also a beautiful song. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the thing, is probably not right for Harry Potter. It's a really good little Bruce Springsteen song. So anyway, 20 years go by, we don't hear the song. It is finally released officially on the soundtrack for Blinded by the Light. And I, being me, took the song, took the last scene of Harry Potter, because I have always wanted to see this, and I edited together the final scene of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone with the song I'll Stand By You going into the end credits. I added a little blurb in the end credits to give a credit to Bruce Springsteen so you could see what it would have looked like. And now if you go to YouTube and go to our YouTube page, the Weekly Stuff Podcast, that video is called Harry Potter and the Boss, and it is up. And Sean, you watched it before we recorded. What was your reaction to the end of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone with Bruce Springsteen?
It made the movie feel like it was made 10 years earlier than it was. It made it feel like a 90s movie immediately. There's something about like the style of the song, which is a really good song. Because you just asked me to listen to watch the first 90 seconds or whatever, which is basically to when it goes to credits. I just watched the whole video just because the song was so good. And it's like, it is in no way appropriate for the tone or feel of that movie. Like, it's not whimsical, you know, it doesn't have that quality to it, but it feels like there is another movie out there that should have that song lead it into the end credits, because it is a great end credits song, just not for fucking Harry Potter.
Because for context, Bruce Springsteen won an Oscar in 1995 for the song Streets of Philadelphia, which plays in the movie Philadelphia. And it's a great song, and he won an Oscar for it. And I think he was trying to think, like, what's my next Philadelphia I can do, you know? And if you listen, I'll Stand By You is, like, production-wise almost identical to Streets of Philadelphia. It's a very similar song in that way. But Philadelphia is a very different movie than Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. But Sean, I just have to indulge for a second in the counterfactual where, what if Columbus had done it? What if he had just pulled the trigger, been a jackass, pissed off John Williams? Like, John Williams probably would never have worked on Harry Potter again, but he would have done it. What a cultural legend would Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone be for ending with Bruce Springsteen? We would still be talking about that, right? How weird that was.
I mean, for me, like, I think if that had happened, then it would just become like a Jason Bourne thing where every movie has to end with that song now. Like, you couldn't just do it at the end of the first movie. You do it at the end of all of the movies. It's like, I don't care if you switch directors. You still have to keep on with it. You have to stick with the tradition.
Like, Dobby is dying in Harry's arms and Bruce Springsteen comes on.
Yeah, the fucking Voldemort shoots the beam of light into the sky at the end of 7 Part 1 while Bruce Springsteen starts playing. Holy shit, that would be great.
Here's the other part of the counterfactual, Sean. If they had put this song in the movie, Bruce Springsteen would have been eligible for another Best Original Song Oscar. He would have almost certainly been nominated, because he is Bruce Springsteen. He had already won. When he was not nominated in 2009 for The Wrestler, that was because of a problem in the rules, and it was such a scandal, they changed the rules of the category because they accidentally snubbed Bruce Springsteen. So he would have been nominated. And his only competition that year would have been the song that won, which was a shitty Randy Newman song from Monsters, Inc., and the Enya song from Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, May It Be. If Springsteen had been in that category, I think he would have won. And in the history of Harry Potter, the only Oscar winner for Harry Potter would have been Bruce Springsteen. That is my favorite part of this story. If they had done it, there is a good chance that 20 years later, there would have been, you know, however many Oscar nominations Harry Potter got, it never won anything. But if he had won that, the only Oscar winner for Harry Potter would have been an American singer-songwriter.
Yeah, you know, there are lots of things in our world that are evidence that we are in the wrong timeline, that we made the wrong turn at some point. And this is just another fact on the pile of we fucked up as a species. And we didn't end up in the best of all possible worlds because Bruce Springsteen did not win. It was not the only person to win an Oscar for Harry Potter.
But go watch the video, because I have been waiting like 15 years to see that scene with Bruce Springsteen on it. And it's very good. It's, I mean, it doesn't fit, but it's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, it does. It changes the feel of that movie so immediately and starkly to me. That's like, holy shit. Like, it is very clear why Christopher Columbus would not have used that song for the movie, but I still wish he would have.
I know. All right. You want to move on to some news, Sean?
Oh boy, Jonathan, what's going on in the entertainment news?
All right. I have got this split into gaming news, which was fairly light this week, all things considered, and movie news, which was fucking insane.
Yes.
So, let's start with gaming news. First up, Sony this week. Sony Worldwide Entertainment acquired Insomniac Games, bringing them in-house alongside other developers for the PlayStation like Naughty Dog, Guerrilla Games, etc. Insomniac's most recent game was, of course, Spider-Man, but they've made things like Ratchet and Clank and other PlayStation-centric series. They noted in the press release that Insomniac's most recent game, Spider-Man, has sold 13.2 million copies to date, which is, in fact, a lot of copies.
Yeah.
And yeah, my first reaction to this, Sean, was I'm kind of amazed Sony did not do this earlier.
Yeah, it's always been a weird thing of where for the longest time I had assumed that Insomniac was a Sony-owned studio like Naughty Dog, and then they made, I think it was called Fuse, which was a multi-platform game which just bombed and seemed terrible. And then they made Sunset Overdrive in like 2013 or 2014 at the beginning of this generation, which was an Xbox One exclusive, which seemed good. Like the people who liked that game really liked that game, but it didn't sell particularly well. And then immediately Insomniac went back, like they made the Ratchet and Clank kind of remake kind of game for the PS4, and then Spider-Man. So it is just like, it's been that weird thing of where Insomniac clearly had its like kind of home at Sony. It felt like a Sony studio. It made Sony style games. But they were technically not actually owned by Sony, and so now them coming under the fold, it feels appropriate. Like it feels like, yeah, that's where they should be. Spider-Man selling 13.2 million copies means it is like easily the biggest selling superhero game ever, like by a significant margin. Like the Arkham games sold well, they did not sell 10 plus million copies well, you know. So that's cool. Like that, it makes me really, this news makes me really especially excited for Spider-Man 2, because that means that Insomniac as a studio has like, you know, it has a level of kind of safety to it being a first-party studio now for Sony, that they have access to more resources and they can kind of go more out on a limb and do what they want to do. They don't have to hedge their bets as much necessarily, because they're, you know, at risk of being basically, you know, sinking as a studio if they don't do well when they're out in the market. With Sony, they have a lot more support. And then plus, if they've made a game that sold 13.2 million copies, they're going to get an extra super amount of support for that, which means that Spider-Man 2 is probably going to be a fucking kick-ass game.
And it also, to me, indicates that as much as we love Spider-Man and are excited for the next one, we know that Sony, their recent track record is they do not force their developers to stay on one thing forever anymore.
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
They are not Microsoft putting 343 in the salt mines doing Halo until the sun burns out, right?
Yes, they do not name video game studios after specific video game franchises, thus cursing that studio to only ever be able to work on that franchise.
Yes. So that also tells me that whether Insomniac ever becomes kind of a dual-track development studio, or whether they just, after Spider-Man 2, want to like go do something crazy, Sony will probably let them, and they are one of the most talented developers in the industry. I think them being in the Sony family is just like, that is a net positive, I think, for the industry, because it is a good place for them. It is a good move for Sony. It's one of the most natural acquisitions I could ever imagine, and one that like that feels good. It's not like someone getting undue power like Disney buying Fox or something. It is like a very natural fit where like we will get more good games out of it.
Yeah, and then plus like one other thing that Insomniac had done when it was doing a lot more multi-platform stuff was they did make a number of different smaller VR games for like the Oculus Rift. So they have experience working in the VR space as well. So I'm guessing that is something that Insomniac is going to do at Sony, is probably have the main studio working on Spider-Man 2. But I'm going to guess they're going to have a smaller sort of like satellite teams working on either PSVR games or smaller games, because Insomniac has been doing that for a while out in the sort of open market. So that would be cool. As well, to see if they are going to continue to make those kind of smaller games while they're at Sony.
We've got to get a Spider-Man VR experience where you swing through New York in VR, right?
Yes. Well, I think there was a shitty one of those made as a tie-in to Far From Home, because that's what VR is now. But hopefully they can do a good one of those.
Yes.
Hopefully someone eventually will make a good VR game, I guess.
We should mention that, and we'll talk about this more when we get to the news about Sony and Disney and all of that. Sony does not own Spider-Man. They license Spider-Man. So while I believe the Insomniac games are safe for now, it is worth considering Marvel and Disney do own the rights to Spider-Man. They have licensed it out to Sony to do this. That would not necessarily be affected by the deal so far. But if at some point Sony decides, I don't know, there's a lot that like Disney could get petty with that. I'm sure the contract was for 2 or 3 games and they are safe for a little while, but that could get complicated in the time to come. That's all.
My guess is that that's not going to become an issue because like the PlayStation branch is not Sony's movies. You know, it's not Sony Picture Studios. Like so that, and then Marvel Game Studios is not the rest of Disney. Like there's obviously a chance that the higher ups would get petty about it, but my guess is that that's probably not going to end up being a problem because it feels like these specific sort of branches of the companies are off enough to the side. I don't see why that would end up affecting them.
It really makes the decision not to do MCU Spider-Man look extra prescient for this, right?
Yes, yeah, because that would have been what would have fucked them. Like they maybe they'll get petty and with costumes or something like that in a weird way. Who knows? But I don't think the games are going to get roadblocked in any way.
Okay. So next up on here, The Witcher 3 we knew was coming to Nintendo Switch, but it got a really big showcase for the press and for the public this week. They did an extended 40-minute demo presentation on Nintendo's YouTube channel with the developers from CD Projekt Red, and then press got to play the game in handheld and on TV screens for the Switch with developers there talking about the port. They were very open. I think the port looks surprisingly great. Reaction from those who played the hands-on was almost universally positive. We learned that Saber Interactive, who have worked with the aforementioned 343 on Halo DLC in the past and are very talented, helped with the port, and they did finally announce the date. It's coming October 15th, 2019 for the full $59.99, but this is, of course, the complete version of the game with all the DLC. And, you know, I liked how open the developers were with it. They were just straight up saying, like, this is what we cut back on. This is what our, development priorities were. And, you know, if you only looked at the video on your big TV screen, you might have been like, this doesn't look great. One way to, gauge it is watch the video on YouTube, on your phone, which would be, the size of the Nintendo Switch screen. And it looks really good there. And you can also go into the Nintendo Switch eShop and watch, video footage on the actual Switch where it also looks good. I would say overall what the port looks like is if The Witcher 3 were a PS3 game, is kind of where the textures and everything sort of landed at. But it still basically has the draw distance. It has very similar performance, which is to say it is not a perfect 30 FPS, but the PS4 was famously also not a perfect 30 FPS. The developers gave press save states at places where they knew press would want to check, like Novigrad and things like that, so they could really test the performance. And apparently it was again, not stellar, but totally on par with other console versions. And I'm impressed by all of that, because obviously there was no game on the Switch so far that presented anywhere near the technical challenge of The Witcher 3, and it sounds like they've done a good job on it, and CD Projekt Red was not going to let their baby out into the world in totally compromised fashion, so I was happy to see that.
Yeah, it is definitely really impressive. I mean, it is the thing of where, I find it hard to envision, people wanting to play this version of the Switch on their big screen TVs, because, it is... If you do watch the footage on your TV, it is extremely blurry. But if you're looking for if you're someone who plays your Switch mostly handheld and you have not played The Witcher 3, this seems like a no-brainer, right? If you want to play this game on the go, there is literally no other way to do that. And this is extremely impressive. I'm really curious to see how if there are going to ever be any issues with the sort of breadth of the open world, because the Switch I don't think has had a game quite the size of The Witcher 3 on it, so hopefully there's no issues with that. But it is crazy. It is fucking crazy that The Witcher 3 is able to run on the Switch like that.
Absolutely. And I did read from press who tried to push that element of it, Sean, one video from people who were talking about it said they got on Roach and just ran in one direction, and they said Roach could go full speed, everything, the draw distance was fine. You do get some pop-in on foliage as you go, which is not quite there in the PS4 version, but it was fine streaming the open world, and that's super impressive. The game is obviously compressed more because it's 30 gigabytes, and I think on PS4, what's it up to? Probably 70?
Yeah, 80? It's probably 70, 80, somewhere in that range, if you put all the DLC together.
But press also said, while assets are compressed, the music is, but you can't really hear it. Like, they did a good job with the music compression. This was a problem on some ports, like Dark Souls on Switch has very, very tinny, low bitrate music, which is kind of a disappointment. Witcher obviously has a lot more sound elements than Dark Souls, so it would be even more important for The Witcher to stay good on that, and apparently they did. So I'm impressed, and I'm someone who kind of goes 50-50 handheld versus TV, but I do have this port pre-ordered. I don't know if I would if I didn't like have a podcast, but I want to talk about it, and I am so fascinated by it. It's kind of like I own Doom on Switch, not because it's how I want to play Doom, but I'm so fascinated to like look at it and play around with it, and I kind of want to do that with Witcher 3 as well. And of course, it works like the others where you can just jump into the DLC, you don't have to play the base game, and I have not played the Witcher DLC yet, so that might be how I test this.
Cool, yeah. Blood and Wine is phenomenal.
Yes. So, and it's there. So, hey, pretty cool. And especially crazy that this is launching basically with the Nintendo Switch Lite, which means you can play this game now on something that's roughly the size of a Vita.
Yeah.
That's nuts. Remember when the Vita tried to do an Uncharted game, Sean?
Oh, yeah, no, I played like 30 minutes of that Uncharted game, and then I stopped because,
we've come a long way on handhelds, haven't we?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Okay, let's see. Next here, this is all Gamescom news. PUBG is getting crossplay between PS4 and Xbox One in October. This is, I think, the second crossplay thing PS4 has allowed, right? Because they allowed it on...
I think there's been some more, because I think... because Fortnite definitely has it. I think Rocket League has it as well.
Okay.
I
know they announced that like beta program for it, but it was so restrictive, not a lot of developers were getting into it. I didn't know if people had actually started. But that's kind of interesting. PUBG feels like its moment was 2 years ago, but it's kind of interesting that they're allowing this.
Yeah. Like, I had forgotten that PUBG was even on the PS4 in the first place. So,
which frankly might be the reason PS4 allowed it.
Yeah, it's just like, who gives a shit?
I think a lot of people forgot that because it took a while to get on PS4, and at that point, PUBG's star had kind of faded. So that was Xbox news. Another piece of news, this was not Xbox specific, but it was at the Inside Xbox event. I just had to list this because it made me laugh so hard. So the NBA 2K series has been doing these like career mode cinematic campaigns. There are other sports series that have been doing this, right, Sean?
Yeah, it's been a trend for a while. NBA 2K was one of the first ones, and I think it was 2K15 maybe. It was a couple of years ago. They did their campaign mode was directed by Spike Lee. So I don't know if you knew that, but yes, there's like one of the characters dies and becomes like a ghost and gives a monologue or something. Like, go watch some of the cutscenes from the Spike Lee NBA 2K campaign on YouTube because it's fucking nuts.
That's awesome. The 2K20 mode looks similarly nuts, Sean, because they showed off a big trailer, and this game stars Idris Elba, Rosario Dawson, Thomas Middleditch, Ernie Hudson, Lamorne Morris, Maverick Carter, and LeBron James. And I fucking love that they got all those people for this game. Not something I'm going to play, but I kind of love the audacity of, like, those are some serious Hollywood stars in this thing, and basketball players.
Yeah, especially when, like, because I'm pretty sure this year's Madden has basically kind of cut out the story mode thing, because I think they realize it's very hard to do that every single year to come up with another football story to do in your game. So it feels like NBA is just like, nah, fuck it, man. We're just going to lean harder. Let's get fucking Idris Elba and fucking Rosario Dawson and Ernie Hudson. Ernie Hudson is the one that's the most like, what the fuck? Like, that's awesome. Whose idea? Who was like, guys, let's call up Ernie Hudson. Let's get him in our fucking basketball game.
I'd do it if I had the budget. Fuck yeah. Why not?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to skip this next piece and get right into the Gamescom stuff because not a lot of news out of Gamescom. Like, Sony didn't announce anything big, but they did show off more of Death Stranding, where we learned you can urinate freely in gameplay. Mm-hmm. We met Margaret Qualley's character, named Mama, who interdimensionally cradles and breastfeeds a baby, and learned that famous Hideo Kojima sycophant Jeff Keighley will also be in the game. I don't know, is Hideo Kojima just furiously fitting in as many crazy trailers as he can before they actually have to put a game out and we're all inevitably disappointed?
Well, this is the thing, though, is that they weren't, like, it wasn't a Hideo Kojima trailer. It wasn't like, here's, like, the fucking, like, name of the song with the band, like, pops up in the corner in, like, white text, and here's, like, this big, crazy trailer edited together really smoothly. That's what I want from Death Stranding. That's the thing I want the game never to come out, but just give me a bunch of those. This was just normal video game trailers for, like, what is a weird-looking game, so the trailers come across as a little bit weird because the game is inherently weird. But the trailer itself was like, this is just a totally normal trailer for a video game. And so here's just, like, a cutscene with this lady named Mama who's, like, phantom breastfeeding an invisible interdimensional, like, death baby or whatever the fuck it is. Here's, like, Guillermo del Toro talking and just giving, like, weird exposition nonsense to the camera, which I do not know why they chose to show off that, because that's just like, here's a bunch of exposition about the game. I don't just need you to show me that cutscene. And then you had the gameplay trailer, which was Norman Reedus peeing in a field and then walking up a hill, meeting a weird, like, Star Wars hologram of Jeff Keighley, and Jeff Keighley is not an actor. And so that whole conversation is bad. And then Norman Reedus leaves that tent, like, for whatever reason, the character just walks off the side of a cliff and takes fall damage. I'm like, well, this is a weird thing to do in your game trailer. And then the trailer's basically it's like, why would you show us this? Why is this the gameplay footage you choose to show? And it makes me even more concerned that this game is going to be bad, because everything they showed in that trailer looked bad and poorly done. Like, I just don't... Why would you show off the game that way?
I agree. I also just want to talk for a second about Margaret Qualley's character, Mama.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I do not think the video game press is prepared for how surprised they are going to be to learn that Hideo Kojima games are pretty misogynistic. Mm-hmm. Because a Hideo Kojima game has not come out in a time when I feel like the video game press was well suited to tackle sexism in gaming to the degree we are now. Because the last one was Metal Gear Solid 5, and there was some attention paid to, like, Quiet and all of that, but not as much as I think there would be today, where I feel like there are many more publications that have come up, especially in the Me Too era, that have gotten much, much better at talking about issues of gender in gaming and issues of sexism. I'm not saying there were never these publications. There obviously were. It's just there are more of them, and I think there are more writers at major publications who can write eloquently about this. And I think the video game, like, discourse has never really taken to heart that those games are pretty virulently, like, sexist. I don't know if I'd go all the way to misogynistic, because it's not necessarily hateful, but it is definitely, like, sexist and, like, gender reductive in a very male-gazy kind of way. And the fact that this game has characters named, like, Fragile and Mama and all that, and whoever else is named in this, like, I think it's going to be a slight shock to the system, and people are going to be like, what happened to Hideo Kojima? And I'm going to be like, do you remember what they did to the little girl with the bomb in her vagina in Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes? Do you remember that? Oh, right. We weren't paying attention to it back then, but it happened.
Or, like, for me, it's the thing of where whenever anybody talks about how, like, Metal Gear Solid 2 is a masterpiece, it's always like, do you remember the part in the game where you find out that Hal was sleeping with his stepmother and his sister almost drowned in the pool because he was having sex with his stepmother, and I think that's why his dad committed suicide? Like, just having nothing to do with anything else in the game, they just fucking drop that whole awful cutscene on you, and it has nothing to do with anything. It's like, it's always been a part of Metal Gear.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that's going to happen is this is the first non-Metal Gear Kojima game since, like, Boktai on the Game Boy Advance, or, like, something. You have to go back to some, like, a weird game from the early 2000s for the last time he got outside of, like, his Metal Gear hole, which he didn't put himself in. Like, Konami put him in the Metal Gear hole. But he's free of the Metal Gear hole, and now I think people are going to be forced to confront Kojima's, like, I think, less interesting and less compelling creative tendencies totally divorced from so many people's fandom with Metal Gear, which they were sort of, they were bought into because of how interesting and revolutionary those games were in the late 90s and early 2000s with 1, 2, and 3, that like that Metal Gear has a huge fandom associated with it, and that kind of lets you dismiss a little bit of the problematic shit. And I think once you're totally divorced from that, and you just like, here's something totally fresh that is on its own, but it is still clearly like from that creator, I think is going to be harder for people to dismiss some of the stuff from Kojima, both in terms of his game design and then his like narrative and like thematic tendencies as a storyteller that are bad and have always been bad. And people are going to have to finally deal with that shit.
We'll see. It's going to be an adventure, Sean.
Yeah, and this game is not going to be just like standing in a field peeing. Like, there's going to be like a lot of combat and stealth stuff. Like, it's one of the things that feels weird about that gameplay demo is it seems like this is not going to all be representative of what this game is actually going to be. Which I feel like they have still just sort of avoided trying to show people like a reasonably representative slice of what that game is going to actually be like to play. So I'm curious to see when it launches, like how those different elements of the game are going to be proportioned out, like, and how much combat there's going to be versus just like wandering around in an empty field, which is mostly what they've shown in like clips of the gameplay.
All right. You can add to this, Sean, if you have any other Gamescom news, because I scoured and I could not find a lot interesting to put on here. The last Gamescom specific thing I have is that there was a reveal trailer for a new FPS game called Disintegration, which is interesting to me because it's from this new studio, V1 Interactive, which was co-founded by Marcus Leto, who is a co-creator of Halo. He was creative director at Bungie through Halo Reach, basically. So he has not been involved in the 343 games or Destiny. And it was it's going to be published by Take-Two in early 2020. It's kind of a classical FPS in that it's got single player and multiplayer like divided, kind of like Halo would or like Doom has done in the last couple of years. It looked kind of cool, like graphics wise and stuff. You are a robot who gets in a bigger robot, like a big mech suit. Doesn't look like an indie game. It's an indie studio, but like it's got a big like budget behind it. And I honestly can't remember the last time we got like a big new IP FPS. So, like, That's kind of why I threw it on here. But, again, this was not a very active Gamescom, so it's kind of the most interesting thing I could find.
Yeah, I mean, that did seem interesting. Like, I like Marcus Leto. Like, he was one of, like, the biggies. I've seen a lot of interviews with him on the different, like, special editions of Halo 2 and 3. So, I definitely noticed that as well. You did end up, Jonathan, I think, missing the most important news that came out of Gamescom, which is... just out of nowhere, Sega dropped a massive fucking bombshell, which is the Yakuza 345 Remastered Collection finally is coming out over here. These are the updated versions of Yakuza 3, 4, and 5, which are the PS3 Yakuza games, updated to run on the PS4. So they're not like remakes in the Kiwami sense. It is like, they're like, presumably they'll be like 4K, they'll run at 60 frames per second, all that kind of stuff. Those 3, 4, and I think 5 recently came out in Japan, so I think all of them have been out in Japan, or if not, 5 is about to come out in Japan. And we just had not gotten any news, and I have been moaning on this podcast for like a year plus about I really want to play the rest of the Yakuza games, but they are not talking about when they're going to come out stateside. And all of a sudden they just dropped, you can get Yakuza 3 now. It is just, you can go get it. And Yakuza 4 will release, I think it's like November or October, and Yakuza 5 will release in February 2020. I think you have to get them all together. So if you get the digital version, you pay $60 and you get 3, 4, and 5, and you'll get 4 and 5 when they come out on the release dates. But you get 3 now. But they have also announced that they're doing, for when 5 launches in February, a physical release, which is a box set that has all 3 of the games. And that's what I've pre-ordered because I'm not going to have time to play Yakuza 3 right now anyways. And I just finished Judgment a couple of months ago, so I want to pace myself on it. But I have all the other games physically. I might as well get this physical version. Another cool thing for that physical version, though, is if you got Yakuza 5 on the PS3 back in the day when it came out over here, it was only ever available digitally because Yakuza was not very popular till 0 happened. And so they have put in a PS3 box for Yakuza 5 in the physical release of the Yakuza Remastered Collection. So you get the nice new box with the 3 games, and then also a PS3 game with like the PS3 box art for Yakuza 5. So you get the case. So if you're someone who like really cares about your physical collection stuff and you just want to display, you have like the original Yakuza 1 and 2 on the PS2, and 3, 4, and 5 on the PS3, and there's just this weird dead spot where 5 would be, even if you own the game. You can get that case, and you can put it right in there, which is the, like, nerdiest, most specific thing I've heard a video game company sell to someone in the longest time, but I love it. Like, if you want the physical versions, you should pre-order it, like, now, because there's only going to make a limited number of them, so if you want the physical versions, go out and get those. And one other thing that's really cool is that the like localization team that they brought on since like Zero, it has looked at and kind of updated the localization of all 3 of the games. Most importantly for 3, which had a significant amount of content cut from its Western release because they thought like some of the weirder stuff in the game Western audiences wouldn't respond to, and so they cut a lot of like the weird mini games and shit out of it, and they have put all that stuff back in. They have updated the remaster, and so all the games are going to have updated dialogue. Obviously not every single line is going to be changed, but anything that like they thought this localization didn't work out well, they're going to update all that stuff as they're putting the games out, which is one of the reasons why they're staggered. And so that, to me, was the coolest announcement out of Gamescom, was finding out they're coming out soon, and they're doing right by it. Like, they're giving us the best possible versions of these games in the West, and they're giving you a fucking PS3 case. What more could you ask for?
That is all amazing. I love it. I think it's awesome. I did not put on the outline only because, not being a Yakuza expert, I did not know how much of this was new information. So I'm glad you brought it up, and I have to say, I have not played Yakuza yet. Knowing that I want to in the future, I might just pre-order that fucking box so that, like, I could have it when I get to those games, you know?
Yeah, because I've got Yakuza 0, Kiwami 2. I have a physical version of Yakuza 6 I bought like a year ago because it was on sale on Amazon. I was like, might as well get this. It's got a little art book in it, so might as well fucking grab it. So now I'll have all of them lined up on my shelf. I'll have all the Yakuza games.
Because I think 0 and Kiwami 1 and 2 are even PlayStation hits now, which means they're all $20 a piece, physical or digital.
Yes, yeah. So you can get those games super cheap. They're great. Yeah. They're awesome. I'm also just I'll be very excited to play. It'll be nice having 3, 4, and 5 run at like 60 frames per second and all of that, because I love the Dragon Engine games and they're gorgeous, and I would take those over the PS3 ones at 60. But as someone who started with Yakuza 0, in my head, Yakuza is a 60 frames per second video game franchise, and so it'll be nice to have that. Oh, one other thing that they also updated with Yakuza 3 that I just remembered that is very good is apparently Yakuza 1, 2, and 3 didn't have icons on the map that showed you where the side quests were, and that was something they started doing in 4. So if you played Yakuza 3, I guess you just had to kind of wander around the map and stumble into where the side quests are, and now they have added back in the little like exclamation points on the map that tell you where side quests are, which is thank you, because that would be a huge pain in the ass, because I would just look it up on the internet anyways, which is what everyone would do. So that's nice. Like, it's so cool that they're like, even though they're not full remakes of those games, they're going back and doing like a good amount of work to update them and make them feel like relevant. So I am very, very happy. That was by far the best news out of Gamescom to me.
Absolutely. Okay, and final piece of gaming news. This is obscure, but the news made me laugh, and then I got fascinated, so I just had to throw it on here. So, if you've seen the movie The Big Short, which was the movie about the financial collapse that starred Brad Pitt and Christian Bale played a character named Michael Burry. Michael Burry was the first major investor to short the U.S. housing market in the mid-2000s. He made a 500% return on investments through credit default swaps before the subprime mortgage collapse. And it was revealed this week that he is now long on stock in GameStop. GameStop has, if you've been following this, lost 70% of its market valuation in the last year, with a $900 million drop in its market cap. Burry now owns, or his hedge fund he runs, owns a 3% stake in GameStop, and he wrote a memo reasoning that GameStop, in addition to having, like, he wrote that he thought it had, like, solid bookkeeping and stuff, has upside potential because the 2020 consoles will still have optical drives, thus extending GameStop's life significantly. He added, quote, "The rise of game streaming competitors is creating a perfect storm where things look terrible, but they look worse than it really is." And after the report came out on Burry's investment, GameStop stock rose by 18% in a single day. I thought, like, that's kind of wild, because GameStop being fucking dead has kind of been common knowledge for a couple of years. And then, like, this is just like, is this some harbinger of the end times? Because the last time this dude made a crazy investment, the U.S. housing market collapsed and everybody lost their pensions. So, like, this is crazy.
Well, yeah, but I mean, but also in associated news, like 2 days ago, GameStop laid off like 8 different people at Game Informer, because for people who don't know, Game Informer, which is basically the last bastion of video game magazines, is owned by GameStop. And like out of nowhere, as far as I know, like the people working there were given effectively no notice ahead of time. They came into work, and like 8 of them, which is a significant number of the staff working on the magazine, were just laid off. Mostly relatively newer additions to the editorial and online team. So that tells me that maybe GameStop is as bad as it seems, and GameStop is fucked. Like, I don't think, like, GameStop is not just fucked because, you know, things are moving towards a digital market. They're also fucked because they're a bad company with bad policies that, like, they make big mistakes frequently. And so they keep on shooting themselves in the foot. And so they're in a market that is declining, and they're like torpedoing it even further because it's not a smart business run intelligently. And so, you know, I do not think that investment is a good idea. I would not recommend people just jump onto GameStop's stock, especially not now after it rose.
Yes, because, like, to be clear, neither of us are investment experts. We are not trying to give you investment advice here. We are not fiduciaries, Sean.
That's true.
But the logic I think Burry is laying out here, like, there's the thing about optical drives still being in consoles, which is true but kind of trivial, because optical drives have been in consoles the entire time GameStop has been shooting itself in the foot over and over again.
Yeah, like, optical drives are also in PCs and laptops, and how many fucking physical PC sales are there in the US, you know?
Exactly. I think the bigger point he makes is that, and I think he's correct about this, that the landscape for physical media and game stores looks worse than it actually is, and that creates an upside for investment potential, because you could invest when it's low, like he did, and it will stay steady or over time rise, because the belief that the industry is not forcing it out of existence. And I think he's correct about all of that. The incorrect element here is the diagnosing that what you just said, Sean. There's no inherent reason GameStop needs to be dying. Like, the market is not that bad. You know, people still buy plenty of physical media, and I actually think a store that caters towards gaming physical media and retro hardware and things like that in kind of that niche fashion while also being a chain, that kind of business could do amazingly well, I think, in the industry in 2019. They just don't, because GameStop is an awful, abusive, shitty company that is full of idiots, right? That's where I would never invest in GameStop. Like, yes, I think if you were just looking like at the books and at the upside potential, sure. But if you know gaming culture, which I'm guessing Michael Burry does not, then you would be more let's just say bullish on it, bearish. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I agree.
I think it's an interesting story. People were talking about this mostly because of, again, like, he's someone a lot of people probably should have listened to in the year 2005. But I don't think we need to be that worried with the GameStop news. Okay.
Although I am really looking forward to The Big Short 2 about GameStop. The Big Stop.
The Big Stop. Okay. That movie's going to win a bunch of Oscars in 2035.
Exactly.
All right. You want to talk some movie news, Sean?
Oh, boy. Yep. Oh, my God. There's so much. I'm just scrolling down the outline.
I know.
Let's dive into it.
So, there's a new James Bond movie coming out. We've known this for a while. This is the movie directed by Cary Fukunaga, still starring Daniel Craig as James Bond. There's been little bits and pieces of news because they've been shooting for a while. I think they're finished with production, but they did announce this week the title of the new James Bond film. It had previously just been called Bond 25 because it's the 25th movie. And it is called No Time to Die, which was like made fun of on the internet this week for good reason. It's kind of a silly title, but I frankly am glad to be back to silly James Bond titles because like we had Skyfall, and that's a pretty good James Bond title, but it's like a very like upstanding, like classy James Bond title. Then we had Spectre, which is kind of a lame title and a terrible movie. And I want crazy James Bond titles. Quantum of Solace is the best Daniel Craig title because it's the silliest. No Time to Die. There, we can put that on the shelf with Die Another Day, Live and Let Die, all of those. Tomorrow Never Dies. I'm happy to have another silly James Bond title.
Me too. Although I am just like exhausted on this James Bond movie because I feel like production around like getting it made has been so fucked and confusing that at some point like I had just completely forgotten that Fukunaga was attached to it, like because I felt like they were just tossing around, is Daniel Craig going to be in it? Yes, no, maybe. Who's going to direct it? Wasn't Danny Boyle going to make it at some point?
Yep.
Yeah, it's just I've just been so confused and don't really give a shit at this point. So
yeah, the production of this movie has been cursed. I am not optimistic about it because like all signs kind of point to no. The only sign that points to yes is that the person who came in and did all the rewrites is Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who is probably one of the 5 smartest writers for film or television on planet Earth today. Like you could not get a better person to write anything than Phoebe Waller-Bridge. If you have not seen Fleabag on Amazon, watch it and you will know what I mean. But like, and Cary Fukunaga is an immensely talented director, but like this movie has been kind of cursed for like 5 years. They've been trying. The production did not go smoothly in a bunch of different ways. This was yet another movie where the action star like broke a leg a week into production, and then they had to delay everything, and they were doing rewrites on the set and all this stuff. So hopefully it's good. It's it's got a great cast. We've got Felix Leiter in it again, as with Jeffrey Wright, who I love and has not been in the Daniel Craig movies enough. I think the last one he was in was Quantum of Solace. I would like Daniel Craig to get a proper send-off in this role, which is what this movie is supposed to be, because again, Spectre is, I think, the worst James Bond movie. So we will definitely see. I am cautiously optimistic, but also cautiously pessimistic, like at the same time. So that's how it goes.
Yeah.
All right. Then here was the bombshell this week, I feel like, for movies in terms of... Because we'll talk about the Spider-Man thing later. The Spider-Man thing, for many reasons, did not surprise me. This surprised me. Warner Brothers confirmed production this week of a new Matrix movie, directed by Lana Wachowski, with Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss reprising their roles as Neo and Trinity, written by Lana Wachowski with Alexander Hammond and David Mitchell, eyeing a production start in early 2020, probably for release in 2021. Neo and Trinity are both very, very dead at the end of Matrix Revolutions. Trinity, I just watched those movies again. Trinity was impaled in several places by giant metal beams, and Neo was electrocuted and carted off by the machines like Jesus. So he's like dead as shit. She's dead as shit. The major character who did not die, Morpheus, is not mentioned in the report. Variety's report writes that plot details are currently unknown, as is how the role of Morpheus will be handled, originally played by Lawrence Fishburne. Some sources say the role may be recast for a younger take, although later in the day on Twitter, Jeff Darrow, who was the conceptual designer on all these movies, says he is returning along with storyboard artist Steve Skroke, and that most of the original cast is returning. So it's possible we have more than Reeves and Moss, and just they haven't dotted the I's and crossed the T's yet. Lana Wachowski wrote, "Most of the ideas Lily and I explored 20 years ago about our reality are even more relevant now. I'm very happy to have these characters back in my life and grateful for another chance to work with my brilliant friends." And we should note that Lily Wachowski the other Wachowski sibling, is not involved with this movie. She has not directed anything since the first season of Sense8 on Netflix. That's the show they did together on Netflix. The first season had the normal directed by the Wachowskis credits, and then for season 2 it was just Lana Wachowski. So Lily has been kind of MIA for a couple of years. I'm not exactly sure what's going on. I know she made her gender transition around the time of the first season of Sense8, I feel, so I don't know if there's anything to do with that, but, like, she's not directing at the moment. I don't think there's any acrimony there, from what I can tell. She's just not making films at the moment. But yeah, they are making a fourth Matrix movie. Sean, what's your reaction?
Holy crap, like, what? It's very hard for me to envision what a fourth Matrix movie is. Because I feel like there have been rumors for a while that there would be some sort of, like, reboot of the Matrix. Like, it's definitely felt like that people were talking about, like, something might happen with the Matrix at some point. But in my head, it would be some kind of reboot. Because I don't think the concept of making presumably is a movie set after Matrix Revolutions, like, that is not something that has ever even occurred to me as a possibility. So, like, I have been struggling to conceptualize what a Matrix 4 would be and what it would look like in 2020 or 2021. Like, what is a new Matrix movie now? Like, what does that even look like is something I've been, like, fascinated about and they're, like, trying to think about since they've announced this news.
Yeah. Let's do a little bit of backup, Sean, on this.
Okay.
I've always loved Matrix 1. These were big movies for me when I was a kid. I had not revisited the sequels in a while, and I wasn't sure of my thoughts on them, so I rewatched the whole trilogy this summer because it's the 20th anniversary, and I can say I am a huge Matrix fan, and I love all three of those movies, and I think people are very, very, very wrong on the sequels. So I am happy about this in a whole bunch of ways. I actually don't know what your thoughts on The Matrix are.
Yeah, I really like the first movie. I've seen the first movie probably 4 or 5 times, though it has been a while for, like, me for anything Matrix related. It's been a long time since I've revisited it. Like, I don't have super developed thoughts or feelings on Reloaded or Revolutions. I've seen Reloaded probably 3 times, but it's been a long time. Then Revolutions, I've definitely seen twice because I've seen all of them. I didn't see the first one in the theater because I was like 8 or whatever, you know.
Yes.
But I saw it shortly later on, probably when I was still too young when I saw it on DVD. But I saw the Reloaded and Revolutions in the theater, and then saw both of those later on DVD because I own all those movies on DVD. But I never really have gone back to the sequels much because I don't know if I have, like, I was never as negative on them as I feel like most people were, but I never, like, was super positive on them either. It was something where I could kind of, like, take or leave it. I remember liking Reloaded more than Revolutions, mostly because I never loved the aesthetic of most of the, like, real world stuff. Like, I'm not a huge fan of the way the machines look and, like, that side of the movies have looked. Again, that might change my feelings on if I watch them again. But that's just sort of how I remember it. I did really like some of the more extended Matrix stuff. I really like the Animatrix. I think the Animatrix is awesome. I liked Enter the Matrix back in the day, though I have not played it since 2003 or something, so that game is probably bad. Everyone says that game is bad. I'm sure it is probably bad. I remember thinking it was cool. I also have incredibly fond memories of renting Path of Neo on the original Xbox, which is the game that sort of retells the story of the first 3 movies as a, like, decent, like, 7 out of 10 action game on the original Xbox that has the most ridiculous thing that has ever happened in the history of video games happen at the end, where when you go to fight Agent Smith at the end of Revolutions, the Wachowskis as stick figures basically enter the game in, like, the white void and say, "Hey, we're the Wachowskis. We made this video game, and we also made the movies." And so when we're making the game, we thought, well, the ending of the movie wasn't quite, good for a video game. So how about instead of having you just fight Agent Smith, what if we had all the Agent Smith make a giant Agent Smith, and then Neo would fly around and fight a giant Agent Smith evil, like, final boss. And then that's what happens, and you fight Agent Smith at the game's over, and just look that up on YouTube. I tweeted it at you, Jonathan, when I think it was when you were tweeting about you watching the movies.
Yes. And I had never seen, I didn't know if it was real or not.
Oh, it's 100% real. And, like, just imagine being someone in 2004 renting that game from Blockbuster at, like, the end of the summer break and playing it and just hitting that point being like, what the fuck is this? Like, they just think that no one was going to finish this game, and so, like, no one would ever see this weird fucking thing they did at the end. So, like, some of that, like, ancillary stuff around The Matrix I've always really liked. So yeah, so that's kind of my feelings on it. Is like, it's a franchise I enjoyed a lot back when it felt like very relevant, but it is one that, like, I think because I feel like The Matrix has just been kind of, as like a multimedia franchise or property, The Matrix has been completely dead for at least 10 years. Like, they have just done absolutely nothing with it. Like, ever since The Matrix Online shut down, that was like the last significant Matrix thing that was around. And so, like, I think partially because I have had no call for it, I have not really revisited those movies. So yeah, those are my feelings on The Matrix.
So a couple thoughts. First, can we just agree our next movie revisit project needs to be the Matrix trilogy?
Oh yeah, it's so obvious. Like, we should have thought of that when we like made the list for the vote or whatever, because it fits so perfectly with the prequel, the Star Wars prequels, Spider-Man, and Lord of the Rings. It is a trilogy from that same period that is super formative for both of us in terms of like taste in film. So yes, we're definitely going to do it.
Yes, because I will say part of why I rewatched them over the summer was frankly as a scouting mission for the podcast. I wanted to see if there was there for us to do this, and I think there is.
Okay.
And I think we would benefit especially from talking about the sequels again, because I really like. I think Reloaded is just a great movie sequel, and I think Revolutions has a rough first half and a phenomenal second half into a phenomenal ending. So I'm sure we will do that soon. I would love to do that within 2019 because it is the 20th anniversary of The Matrix, so it would be fun to get into that at some point. But
and hey, those movies aren't 4 hours long, so I can watch them.
No, they're all close to a tight 2. And then Animatrix as well, which, despite all of this, I've actually never sat down and watched the Animatrix, so that would be an excuse to do that.
Yeah, it's very cool.
So, and I did actually just buy Enter the Matrix for the PS2 because it was for $1 at a Goodwill, and I did get my PS2 out recently for some things, so I might give that a spin at some point as well.
That's very funny, because I was about to say that earlier today I was on Amazon.com seeing how cheap I could get Enter the Matrix and Path of the Neo for the original Xbox, and I can get them for like $3 used. So I'll probably get both of those games and play those again also. Because for people who don't know, Enter the Matrix is a like multimedia tie-in game to Matrix 2 that has like about an hour worth of live action footage shot by the Wachowskis while they were making Matrix 2 and 3. And so there are scenes with Carrie-Anne Moss and Lawrence Fishburne and Keanu Reeves and Agent Smith. Like all those characters are in there with like live action footage. It's fucking weird when you go back and think about like that. It feels like something that the Matrix tried to do that was like ahead of its time in a weird way or something. Just like thinking about the multimedia potential of that side of things. And Enter the Matrix, again, probably is a bad game to play, but conceptually, that is a really cool thing to do.
And you don't need the game to watch all of that. The DVD and Blu-ray of Matrix Reloaded have always had that footage on there.
Oh,
so
that's cool.
You can just go watch those cutscenes. At least the Blu-ray I have does. I'm sure, especially if you have one of the collector's DVD sets, I know they added it in the box set that came out. So anyway, and YouTube as well. But they're at least officially out there on the DVDs and Blu-rays. So backing up, though, through all this, Sean, because you said, like, The Matrix has been basically dead for 10 years, and that's because I think I can say with some confidence, The Matrix is, of every 21st century franchise, the most auteur-driven. Like, those are scrappy little art house movies that somehow got $200 million budgets. Like, that is how you describe the Matrix movies. The Wachowskis, they are, I think, especially when you watch the Matrix movies today, knowing both what we know now, that the Wachowskis are both trans women, which we did not know when they came out, and looking at all of their work past the Matrix movies, like V for Vendetta and Speed Racer and Cloud Atlas and Jupiter Ascending and Sense8, there is a lot in those movies that I think the culture did not process when they came out because the ideas were frankly ahead of their time. And I find all of that really interesting, and those Matrix movies would never, ever be funded by a major studio today. That script would never get through, which is why I'm excited, because they're kind of grandfathered in with Matrix 4. I assume they are not going to make Lana Wachowski sanitize this, but it has been an open secret for about 10 years that WB has wanted to do more Matrix. They have desperately wanted to do more. They do not have to have the Wachowskis on board, but I think WB is actually a very personnel-driven studio, and they tend to be fairly loyal to their people. So they have not pulled the trigger. They have explored options. One of the open secrets is that for years they have been trying to do something with Michael B. Jordan, and doing something with Michael B. Jordan and The Matrix. That never happened for whatever reason, and they have had some kind of standing offer to the Wachowskis this entire time. And I think the Wachowskis have always known that if things ever got tight, if they had a couple of flops, or if they couldn't get things funded, they could always just go make a Matrix movie, have it make $1 billion, and then they can do whatever they want for another 20 years. And I think the Wachowskis might be at that point after Jupiter Ascending kind of bombed, Cloud Atlas was critically acclaimed but kind of bombed, and Sense8 actually was very acclaimed, and I really do. I have never watched that show. I'm sure it's great, and I really want to watch it. Did well for Netflix, but is a TV project. So it could be I both believe that Lana Wachowski wants to do this and has ideas for it, but it's also this is kind of an opportune moment where WB needs an ace in the hole, and the Wachowskis, it might be good to have a career boost at this moment in time, and so that's there. I am sure whatever idea they have, it's interesting. I'm really curious because, again, I'm with you, Sean. Matrix Revolutions is a pretty definitive ending, especially for the main characters. They're fucking dead, except for Morpheus, who is not mentioned in this announcement. So I would think the best Matrix sequel would be something that is set 20 years later and does it basically Zeta Gundam style with a new protagonist. And if you see Neo and Trinity, they are in a supporting context. And my guess is that's what this will be. But who knows? Because I think the other thing to say here is probably why WB wanted to go with not a reboot, but a sequel, is that Keanu Reeves went and lapped the entire Matrix franchise and became more popular than ever in the year 2019. Yeah. With John Wick and Toy Story 4 and everything else. This has been the summer of Keanu Reeves. So I think kind of the stars just aligned. But it is fascinating to me because I think it was inevitable that WB would do more Matrix someday. Doing it as a straight up sequel is a big surprise, and especially involving all of the original people.
Yeah, and it's a lot more interesting to me than here's the reboot of The Matrix, and it's that's something that I'm just, not to say that you couldn't, if you got good people to make it, it's an impossible project, but it's not conceptually interesting to me. I have no idea if a Matrix 4 will be good, but it's definitely if you're going to do something with the Matrix, that is the thing I want to see is what is a next step? What is something, where could you push the Matrix and update it for 20 years later? Because the Matrix, I think part of it is it is a dated thing. Not that doesn't mean it's bad, but it's so of that moment in time in terms of style, certainly in terms of the fashion in the Matrix, it is, because it's not even, if it's it feels late 90s, it doesn't even feel early 2000s, even though most of it is from the early 2000s. It is of that period, right? So that's one of the reasons why it's hard for me to fathom what does a Matrix 4 look like, because I don't know if you can just have Keanu Reeves wear a weird leather trench coat and sunglasses in 2021. I don't know if you can get away with that and just play it straight. I'm curious to see what are the things that they decide are things that need to be updated and changed, and what are the things about it, even superficial style elements, that are so inherent to the Matrix that you can't change it. And is it possible to update some of those concepts and still retain the core of the Matrix for 2021? I have no idea. But I'm excited to see.
I am very excited to see what R word will be the title of this sequel. Because they did Matrix Reloaded, Revolutions, and then the documentary was called The Matrix Revisited. So they've always done R word sequels. So Because they've already used the best one. The Matrix Reloaded is like my top 3 sequel titles of all time. It's just such a good title. And Reloaded would actually be a pretty good title for a 20 years later sequel, but they already used it. So we'll see.
The Matrix Reloaded.
The Matrix Revolutions 2.
The Matrix 2.
Later. Oh, God.
Zeta Matrix.
That'd be good. Zeta Matrix. And then they could do double Zeta Matrix.
Exactly.
Okay. Let's move on to another movie sequel people thought probably was never going to happen, which is that the Vince Gilligan Albuquerque Televisual Universe, or the VCATU, which is an acronym I came up with that I would really like to get trending.
You mean the Vakatu?
Yeah, the Vakatu is getting bigger in October with El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie, premiering on Netflix October 11th. This is not completely out of the blue. It had been previously announced that Netflix and AMC were co-financing a Breaking Bad movie to be written and directed by Breaking Bad creator Vince Gilligan. It was filmed under the working title Greenbrier, but we actually didn't even know it had filmed until this last week when Bob Odenkirk, the star of Better Call Saul, kind of accidentally let slip, yeah, they shot that whole thing a year ago in Albuquerque. So it stars Aaron Paul as Jesse. It is a sequel to Breaking Bad, so it takes place after the finale. The official plot synopsis from Netflix is, in the wake of his dramatic escape from captivity, Jesse must come to terms with his past in order to forge some kind of future. So the movie stars Aaron Paul, written and directed by Vince Gilligan, and the short teaser they put out shows Skinny Pete, who is one of the drug boys, who's one of Jesse's friends, being interrogated by the police. So, yeah, this will be the third installment in the Vakatu, as I like to call it. And, you know, I think on paper, do we need a Breaking Bad sequel? No. In a world where we also did not need Better Call Saul, and then Better Call Saul turned out to be, I think, significantly better than the parent show, I'm all for it, and I think if you question the intelligence of Vince Gilligan doing this, you're probably an idiot just based on history at this point.
Yeah, I have not seen Better Call Saul yet, so that connection I don't have because I did watch the teaser, and as someone who likes Breaking Bad, respects it, but doesn't have spoilers, Breaking Bad's not going to be in my top 10 TV shows. I just don't have that kind of love for Breaking Bad. That teaser did not make me get me super stoked for the adventures of Aaron Paul or Jesse the Pinkman in a post Breaking Bad world. That doesn't grab me immediately. Again, I'm sure it's going to be very well made, but I need to wait to see a bigger trailer or something to get a sense of what the actual movie's what the movie's actually going to go for, because that, as someone who's not just Breaking Bad related thing, I'm 2 thumbs up on board. The teaser did not necessarily get me super excited about it.
Yeah, I didn't much. The teaser's fine, but it's a teaser. It's a small scene. It's less than a minute. It's just Skinny Pete basically. Honestly, what the scene is it's recapping where Jesse was at the end of Breaking Bad. That's what it's there for. It's to remind the audience what it was, because here is where I do think there's a lot of room for dramatic potential, is that the last season of Breaking Bad, I think everyone agrees, is phenomenal. I know you thought that when you watched it, right?
Yeah, it's really well done.
The one weak spot I have with the last season of Breaking Bad, specifically, I'm talking about Season 5, Part 2. Season 5, Part 1 is actually the worst season of Breaking Bad. But Season 5, Part 2 is the best. And the one weak part is I think Jesse gets a little lost in the narrative shuffle. Because Jesse is essentially the series co-lead in Seasons 2, 3, 4. And then in Seasons 5, A and B, he's kind of back to being a supporting character. And people like Hank and Skyler are kind of elevated above him in ways that makes sense for where the story went, but I don't feel Jesse got the full character resolution I wanted for him, because he is such a rich and fascinating character, and it's such a beautiful performance from Aaron Paul. And so I think doing a sequel where you follow Jesse Pinkman in the El Camino he escapes the Nazi compound in, and going off and seeing what his life is, I'm down for that, because I think that's genuinely an area where there was a loose end in Breaking Bad, where there's a string to tug on, and there's a creative potential there. And then you just add in that, Vince Gilligan has yet to create anything in the Breaking Bad universe that is not pretty stellar. and he is a great writer and director. And then again, this was not one of those like someone forced him to do it. Netflix was open to this because Breaking Bad is an AMC show, but basically got popular because of Netflix, and it's been one of the biggest shows on Netflix since it came on there. So like the money was there. There was the desire to do it. I'm kind of excited for it for that reason. I also want to point out they put out a poster for this, and it is one of the best movie posters I've seen in years.
Yeah, the poster is great. It puts another poster we'll talk about later to shame. Like, I looked at both of those posters within like 10 seconds of each other. I'm like, the first I looked at one of them once, like, yeah, that's okay. And then I saw the El Camino one, like, holy shit, fuck yeah, like, this movie's not even going to be shown in movie theaters, so I don't know in what context I will ever see this poster, but that's a great fucking poster.
It looks like the cover to like a pulp novel in the 50s.
Yeah.
It's so good. Yes. And Aaron Paul, such a good performance. I'm very excited to see what they do with it. And then we're also getting, because we're not getting Better Call Saul this year. It's not returning until 2020. So this will be a nice return to Vince Gilligan's Albuquerque televisual universe. I'm forgetting my own acronym. But like, I feel like, especially now that we have 3 entries in it, we need a term. So I am coining the Vakatu.
Eventually I'll get to Better Call Saul. How many? Because this will be season 5, right? I think Better Call Saul going to end up going longer than Breaking Bad?
Probably not. It sounds like the plan is that will be 6 seasons, but remember, Breaking Bad is also 6. It's just 5 was split in 2. And Breaking Bad had longer seasons. Better Call Saul is 10-episode seasons, so I think their plan is probably 6-ish seasons of 10 episodes each, which would mean Better Call Saul is 60 and Breaking Bad is 62 episodes. So, like, roughly equal. But yes, Better Call Saul has turned out to be a pretty long show. And if you want to know how gloriously, wonderfully slow a slow burn Better Call Saul is, he doesn't call himself Saul Goodman until the finale of season 4.
Good. Perfect.
Yes. It is if your favorite mode of Breaking Bad is like season 3, 4, super careful, like meticulous narrative with a lot of like slow burn moments, like a lot of like you will just watch Mike spend 20 minutes planning some sort of criminal enterprise. That is Better Call Saul, and it's everything I love most about Breaking Bad amped to 11 and kind of focused and honed in on. So anyway.
Awesome. Then who knows where next the Vakatu will roam, where else it will go to tell its story.
I should also note that we're calling it the Vakatu because I misspelled it. It should be the Vagatu because it's Vince Gilligan, not Vince Killigan. But Vakatu has already been coined, so fuck it. All right. Let's move on to the big news, Sean. Oh boy. Mm-hmm. Deadline reported on Tuesday that, quote, Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige won't produce any future Spider-Man films because of an inability by Disney and Sony Pictures to reach new terms that would have given the former a co-financing stake going forward. A dispute that has taken place over the past few months at the top of Disney and Sony has essentially nixed Feige and the future involvement of Marvel from the Spider-Man universe, sources said. Sony confirmed this report that evening to The Hollywood Reporter, with a spokesperson saying, much of today's news about Spider-Man has mischaracterized recent discussions about Feige's involvement in the franchise. We are disappointed, but respect Disney's decision not to have him continue as a lead producer of our next live-action Spider-Man film. We hope this might change in the future, but understand that the many new responsibilities that Disney has given him, including all their newly added Marvel properties, do not allow him time to work on IP they do not own. Kevin is terrific, and we are grateful for his help and guidance, and appreciate the path he has helped put us on, which we will continue. For background information, the original deal that Marvel and Sony struck for sharing Spider-Man covered 3 Spider-Man appearances in Disney-produced films. Those became Captain America Civil War, Avengers Infinity War, and Avengers Endgame, and 2 Marvel Feige-produced solo Spidey films with MCU characters for Sony, which became Spider-Man's Homecoming and Far From Home. Tom Holland has 1 film left on his contract, but that is for Sony, not part of this original 5-film deal with Marvel. Deadline points out that this comes at a moment when the last two films Kevin Feige produced broke all-time records, with Disney's Avengers Endgame becoming the highest-grossing film of all time, and Spider-Man Far From Home surpassing just this week the James Bond film Skyfall to become the all-time highest grosser for Sony Pictures. Sony is working on 2 more solo Spidey movies intended to have Holland starring and John Watts directing, though Watts is not officially signed on and Holland is only contracted for 1. If they go forward without Marvel, this means Feige would not be involved and all MCU connections would be nixed. Deadline reports that this came down to money. The current agreement gives Marvel just 5% of first dollar gross on Spider-Man movies. Disney then proposed a 50-50 co-financing, co-profit agreement with Sony, but Sony balked at this. Marvel does still own the merchandising rights for Spider-Man outright, so this does not necessarily affect ancillary products like the PS4 game, though it could. And Deadline also summarized that Sony does have other Spidey projects in the works. There is a Venom sequel that is underway with Andy Serkis directing for Tom Hardy to return. There is a Morbius the Living Vampire movie with Jared Leto, a Kraven the Hunter movie, and another spin-off with the characters Silver Sable and Black Cat. So, Sean, I know that was a long info dump, but I wanted to make sure we had all the context, because I've seen a lot of bad discussion about this online, including, I have tried to explain this a lot on the podcast, but I've noticed I think a lot of people never understood what the original deal was, so I wanted to lay that out there. But my throat is a little sore from explaining all of that, so Sean, I want your reaction to the Spider-Man divorce proceedings.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, it's that thing of where it's like, you know, obviously the original arrangement was like, you know, it wasn't built on bedrock, right? Like, it wasn't necessarily the thing that this would continue in perpetuity. These are 2 competing studios, and one of them being Disney is like a monolithic empire that is consuming everything in its path. And so I think there's a certain amount of like, Sony needs to sort of stand its ground and say, no, don't. This is the thing we have. We have Spider-Man. Spider-Man is our thing. If Sony doesn't have Spider-Man, Sony's like fucked. So they need Spider-Man.
Because it should also be noted, Skyfall was the highest grossing Sony movie. Sony has lost James Bond. They do not. That's part of why the new James Bond has taken so long, is the contract with Sony ran out. Sony was just the distributor, and the company that Eon Productions that makes James Bond did not like working with Sony and wanted a new studio. Sony is no longer involved. So when you say Spider-Man is all they have, that's a true statement.
Yeah, and so, you know, it's very clear why Sony is doing something as patently fucking stupid as making a Morbius the Living Vampire movie, like optioning spin-offs with characters like Silver Sable and Black Cat, which is like, you know, I have not seen that Venom movie. I know that there are people who like it. I know that it made a lot of money. I just can't ever bring myself to watch that fucking Venom
Sean,
movie.
People like that movie, ironically. Nobody, like,
sure.
Right?
Yes. No, you're right.
People like that movie. People like that movie the way people like the movies on Mystery Science Theater.
Right, yes. Yeah. So it's people have been entertained by that movie. Let's say it that way. So I guess and it did make a lot of money, so I get why they're making a sequel. They're also making a sequel because they need to hold on to every Spider-Man thing they can get, you know. So it's very, the logic of why this is happening makes a lot of sense. It is very frustrating, though, like, coming out of Spider-Man Far From Home, which had such a great setup for that third movie, and obviously, like, that movie will still be made in some way, but this version of Spider-Man has been so attached to the MCU in a way that is not true of most other characters in the MCU. Like, if you had to make Thor 4 and had to have it be completely disconnected from everything in the MCU other than other Thor characters like Valkyrie, you could totally do that. You could very easily make that movie and just have no random reference. Like, you could easily cut most of the other Thor movies or Captain America movies or Iron Man movies, with the exception maybe of Iron Man 2, and excise almost every single, like, direct, obvious reference to another MCU character or property, and those movies would be more or less intact. Spider-Man, that is not the case. You could not take Spider-Man Homecoming and Far From Home and excise every single reference to Iron Man or anything else MCU related. Like, all of a sudden, the Vulture's entire motivation doesn't even exist in Spider-Man Homecoming, because that entire first scene doesn't exist, because it all has to do with the Avengers, right? And every, like, there'd be a lot of confusing scenes of Peter Parker talking to some character off screen that seems to be some sort of mentor. We just don't know who it is, right? The way they have conceptualized this version of Spider-Man is as, you know, this young person that exists and has grown up in this world. He's not someone who, like, the world of the MCU, of, like, the fantastical world of the comic books has begun to happen in his lifetime, in the way that, like, for our, you know, Tony Stark in the MCU, presumably Tony Stark lived in a world that was relatively normal up until the point where shrapnel got exploded into his chest and he made a shoot of iron and he became a superhero, and then superhero shit started happening. I guess there was some Captain America dude way in the past, but nobody ever talks about him until he has his own movie get made, right? So Spider-Man is a character that has grown up in that world where Iron Man exists and is his hero and an idol to him. And so it's a very different take on the character that, to me, if you remove a lot of that stuff, I think it's going to be difficult to hold on to this being that version of Spider-Man, and I think he would slowly, like, slip to being a more generic version of the character, which is not something I want, because we have 5 other live-action Spider-Man movies with 2 other versions of Spider-Man. The thing that makes this one of the key things that makes this Spider-Man is his relationship to the world of the MCU and the characters in it, specifically Tony Stark and Happy Hogan. And so, like, thinking about a Spider-Man 3 that can't have Jon Favreau in it playing Happy, like, that bums me out. And I would want at least that one Spider-Man movie that like have that last thing, because it's so set up so well. And then after that, I honestly wouldn't care that much. I don't necessarily need Spider-Man in a bunch of MCU stuff. I don't need him in a bunch of future crossover movies or anything. Like, I would be fine with it, but I'm not, like, you know, grasping for it. It does hurt to, like, potentially have that third movie that was like a capper to that trilogy not be able to have those elements of the character in it.
I agree, because part of what makes this deal hard right now is that Sony needs the Marvel connections way more than Marvel needs the Sony connections. Because Marvel just wrapped up their big trilogy that they needed Spider-Man for, which was the Avengers thing. Like, I'm sure Kevin Feige had a plan on the big board of, like, where they might put Spider-Man in an upcoming movie, but they're not making Avengers 5 in the next 3 years, you know? So, like, if he was going to be in it, it would not be a big team-up movie a la Infinity War. So, like, Disney does not really have an incentive for that. Sony does, because, like, let's be clear, the reason Far From Home is the highest-grossing Spider-Man movie is because it came after Endgame. Yeah. And because it had all the cross-promotion of Spider-Man was in Endgame, every person on the planet saw Endgame, and then Far From Home had a bunch of characters from Endgame, like Nick Fury. So, like,
and I mean, in Spider-Man, like, the scene of Spider-Man getting dusted at the end of Infinity War, like, basically became a meme. Like the momentum off of those Avengers movies going into Spider-Man Far From Home is tremendous.
Yeah. So, like, the marketing Sony got for Spider-Man just from having Tom Holland lent out to Disney for Avengers is more than money could ever buy in a marketing budget, right? Yeah. That is the best marketing you could ever have. And they do have a third Spider-Man film coming up that is going to be playing off a cliffhanger on Far From Home, and they will not have that marketing. Now, it might be perfectly fine, because the Tom Holland Spider-Man is very well established, and in 2 or 3 years, that afterglow will probably still exist. You know, I don't think it will be a failure suddenly. What I do worry about is the creative side of this. Kevin Feige, objectively speaking, is the most successful Hollywood producer in anybody alive today's lifetimes.
Yeah.
Unless you lived back to, like, the 30s or 40s and were, like, sentient during the reign of classical Hollywood and, like, can remember the times of Louis B. Mayer and shit like that. There has not been a Hollywood producer who has commanded this much market influence in that time. And maybe not ever, if you're just going on sheer, like, dollar amount, like, market capital. Because Kevin Feige has produced, since 2008, 20-some Marvel movies plus these 2 Spider-Man movies, every single one of them has been at least a modest hit. Not a single one of them has flopped, and every single one of them has been critically at least decently regarded. Like, the lowest point would be something like Thor: The Dark World, which you and I happen to love, and there is a fan base for that movie. That is a streak that not a lot of people can claim, and I think it also gives us a lot of data on what Kevin Feige produced superhero movies have in them and can do that non-Kevin Feige superhero produced movies don't have. I guarantee you, if Kevin Feige were not producing, you would not have Mysterio with the fishbowl helmet.
Oh, yeah.
Guarantee. I guarantee you would not have Thor Ragnarok. I guarantee you would not have Captain America picking up the hammer in Endgame. Like, pick whatever nerdy comic shit you want that obviously gets a mainstream audience kind of jazzed for these things. That's what you get from Kevin Feige. And I think the Spider-Man movies are honestly, even though they're Sony movies, kind of like Kevin Feige's producerial id on screen, you know? Like, they're a really deep reflection of how he produces movies, and that if there's an auteur to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's not any writer or director, it's Kevin Feige. And I do worry about a Spider-Man 3, where you had a 1 and 2 that are very MCU heavy, not just in connections, but in tone and flavor. And then, like, I said this to, I was talking to my brother Thomas about this, and I said, I think the chances of a Spider-Man 3 with a Green Goblin villain just went up about 1,000%. Because,
oh my God, you're so right.
Because Kevin Feige is a comics guy who would want to do Kraven the Hunter or something like that. Whoever is producing at Sony, clearly just based on what kinds of shit they make with Spider-Man, is not that person. And they know 2 or 3 Spider-Man villains. And those are Green Goblin and Dr. Octopus. Like, I guarantee that. Like, I'm not guaranteeing that it will happen, but that conversation has started because they no longer have someone in the room who knows every villain inside and out and can push for it with the weight of, I have produced more billion-dollar movies than anyone else in movie history. You know?
And trust me, people would rather watch Mysterio than do another Green Goblin, because we had a Green Goblin in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 1, we had a Green Goblin in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, and we had a Green Goblin in one of the worst, if not maybe the worst superhero movie ever, Amazing Spider-Man 2. We've had 3 live-action Spider-Man movies with Green Goblins in them. Let's not do another one. Let's just stay away from that for a long time.
So that's what worries me. Like, you know, I think there are guardrails here in that John Watts is there as director. And he's kind of locked in, and there's no contractual reason he can't do more. I think it's Eric Summers and Chris McKenna were the lead writers on the first 2 Spider-Man movies. They can still write the third one. Like, there's lots of people who can come in, and, like, the cast is set. They've got, you know, they've got Ned, and they've got Peter, and they've got all of that. We know they've got J.K. Simmons back, you know, at least for one scene as J. Jonah. But yeah, it would be absolutely glaring if Spider-Man Home is Where the Heart Is did not have Happy Hogan in it. It would be absolutely glaring if Peter couldn't shut the fuck up about Tony Stark for 2 movies, and then he couldn't talk about him at all. Because, to be honest, I would like a Spider-Man with Tom Holland that is less heavy on the MCU connections, because I think the first 2 lean into it. Far From Home does it much better, but I do think they lean into it a little too hard. Going from that to that continuity no longer exists is going to be jarring as fuck, right? Yeah. And I agree. It's really just for this third movie where they could kind of hopefully cap the trilogy that it's a problem. After that, who knows? That's what bums me out. That said, I do want to put things in context for a second here, because we've got the fucking Twitter protesters out there being like this is the most peak late capitalism thing I have ever seen. There's a meme going around of Thanos putting the last Infinity Gem in his Infinity Gauntlet, and people have photoshopped to be all the studios Disney owns. So they've got Marvel, they've got Lucasfilm, they've got Pixar, they've got Fox, and the last Infinity Stone is Sony. And people are saying Disney should just buy Sony so they can have Spider-Man. And people aren't doing it ironically. They're serious. Like, look how cool it is that Disney owns the Infinity Gauntlet of corporate mergers. That is peak late capitalism. And I just want to remind us all that if Disney owned Spidey outright, we never, ever, in a million years, in a million lifetimes, in every parallel universe, would have gotten into the Spider-Verse. That would not have happened if Disney owned Spider-Man. And as much as I like, and you like, and we all like Tom Holland's Spider-Man, and we like seeing him in Avengers, I would take Into the Spider-Verse over all those movies in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Just as if Disney had owned Fox 5 years ago, do you think they would have made Logan, Sean?
No, God no.
And as
or Deadpool, like any of those, yeah.
As bad as Fox's X-Men movies frequently were, I would take Logan. I will take all of them so that we could get Logan. And whatever the MCU does with the X-Men, I'm sure it will be good. I would take Logan over all of those. Because Disney will not go out on that limb. They have no incentive to take a risk. And so, Sony does not have a great track record with Spider-Man. They have Spider-Verse, and they have the first 2 Raimi movies. That's a good track record, but the other pile includes Spider-Man 3, Amazing Spidey, Amazing Spider-Man 2, Venom, and that weird Sinister Six movie they almost did. So, I'm a little worried. But I do think it objectively benefits the character and the genre to have a studio incentivized to go out on limbs and take risks in charge of one of these properties. There's a lot I love about the MCU. They do have yet to produce a film as good as Into the Spider-Verse or Logan, and there is a reason for that. So even if we might get a slightly awkward Spider-Man 3 out of this, at the end of the day, it's good that Disney doesn't own Spider-Man. Let's all be clear on that.
Yeah, no, yeah. I'm obviously 100% in agreement. Like, for me, the ideal way that this situation could happen, like this could work out, is for Sony and Disney to reach some sort of agreement that they can do, like they will go with like whatever it was that they had working for them for Far From Home and Homecoming, and make one more Spider-Man movie with Tom Holland with that shit, and then let Spider-Man go and let Sony keep it. Like, that to me would be basically what I want. Like, honestly, I would be 100% fine with this if Far From Home had not had that killer fucking post-credit scene setting up a third movie. Like, if it wasn't for that, I would basically be fine with this, because I really like Homecoming and Far From Home, but I'm not so attached to it that, like, I need that. It's just like, that fucking setup for the first Spider-Man movie was so good. I want that movie, and I don't want that movie to get fucked because of all this, like, all the corporate stuff happening. I just want that. And if I could just get that, then I'd happily is just like, no, yes, keep Spider-Man. Sony, do not die. Sony Pictures, please do not die. I don't want you to go away. You're one of the only people making movies that isn't Disney now. So don't die, please. Please somehow find a way to make a good Morbius living vampire movie. I don't know how that's possible, but hopefully you can figure it out so that you don't die.
Yeah. So I think we're in agreement here. I do think there is a possibility that Disney and Sony come to an agreement, if for no other reason than Disney doesn't really need the money. Not really. They don't need the money at all. Sony does need the money. And Kevin Feige is probably one of the people with the most influence at Disney. And if Kevin Feige wanted to swing his giant money dick around and say, please, I have made you guys so many fucking movies, just let me make one more Spider-Man movie, I think they could work it out. So we will see. I don't think we've heard the end of this story. It's just possible we have.
Yeah.
All right. You want to do some D23 news, Sean?
Yes. Yeah. Talking about, the great monolith that rules all of entertainment. What else has it been talking about, Jonathan?
All right. My voice is getting kind of tired, so I might have to ask you to trade off on reading some of these with me.
Okay.
But we'll see. Let's start here. So I am going through... So let's just say really quick, we are recording this. It is Sunday at 4 p.m. Central, and I last updated the outline Sunday at about 1 p.m. Central. So that's as far into D23 as we're going to get today. If they announced, Black Panther, the series, is launching on Disney Plus on November 15th or something, I haven't heard about that. So we are doing the Friday evening panel is our first thing here. And this is in order of what was announced on the panel. And this panel was all Disney Plus stuff. So this is all for their streaming service. All right?
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, up front, how fucking horrifying how long this is, like, how much they've announced, and it's all just Disney. Like, that is, like, bone-chilling when you look at it, like, completely laid out this way of, like, what the fuck? All, like, yes. And most of this, like, actually, yeah, I would probably say most of this is stuff that I'm really excited for. I'm about to get excited about a lot of stuff we're going to talk about. Always understand that, like, it's super fucked that we are in a position that Disney can do all of this, and it's kind of scary.
I agree. Like, I think I'm of two minds where all of this makes me feel clearer than ever that I think of all the American streaming services, Disney Plus is going to have the best array of original content.
Easily, like, hands down.
But that also kind of terrifies me that any one company could have this array of original content.
Yeah.
So I agree. That's our disclaimer. The first couple things are not things we will be watching, but they made me laugh. Starting with the amazingly titled High School Musical, The Series is coming to Disney Plus on launch day, November 12th. I tried to do some research into this, Sean, and I couldn't figure out what the fuck it was. It's some kind of mockumentary. The official description is that it's about a group of students at East High who stage a performance of High School Musical for their winter theater production, only to realize that there is as much drama that happens offstage as there is onstage. So it is about a group of high school students doing a musical based on the Disney Channel original movie from the 2000s, High School Musical, like the one with Zac Efron and Vanessa Hudgens. Mm-hmm. But it's not actual high school students. It's a fictional thing about a fictional thing. It's several layers of meta.
It is the This Is Spinal Tap of High School Musicals or something. Yeah,
that's probably the quote they want, Sean, from for the back of the box.
Except for anybody who likes High School Musical has not seen This Is Spinal Tap, so I don't know if that reference point works for High School Musical people.
Good point. They continued with Disney Channel content. I'm not sharing everything they shared, just things I found interesting. The most interesting being that they are making a new Lizzie McGuire series, which, if you are not our exact age, Lizzie McGuire was like the most popular live-action show on Disney Channel when we were kids. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I would say so.
It was like that and Even Stevens and things like that. It was on Disney Channel.
That's So Raven. When are we going to get our That's So Raven reboot?
They did that, Sean. It was on ABC Family.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck off. You can't even make jokes anymore. We live in a world where no one can make jokes because they've happened.
Yes. Lizzie McGuire was like the thing that launched Hilary Duff, who, if you are not our exact age, Hilary Duff was an actress.
Saying this is the thing that launched Hilary Duff. The thing that Hilary Duff was in. Was Hilary Duff in much else other than Lizzie McGuire?
She was in Agent Cody Banks.
I
did have to go review several bad rom-coms she was in. She seems like a perfectly pleasant person.
Yeah.
But anyway, Hilary Duff will be back for the Lizzie McGuire reboot, now as a 30-year-old woman. So, okay, that's... Again, there is a small group of people our exact age who might, but not our exact gender, who might find that interesting.
Yeah. It's this, like, millennials becoming adults is a fucking thing right now, Jonathan. Like, yep. we're in a weird period where, like, Disney is going to start producing a lot of content to, like, hit different elements of nostalgia from things that probably best left untouched, like Lizzie McGuire. Like, I don't need my, like, sick Drake and Josh reboot or whatever that's like Drake and Josh's 30-year-old people. Like, I just don't need that. You don't need to make that. Nobody wants to see it.
Sean, I think they announced that too.
No! Don't. That can't be possibly true.
Because that wasn't Disney. That was Nickelodeon. But let me look it up really quick because I swear I heard about that. Okay. Drake and Josh. New Drake and Josh project isn't happening. Okay.
Thank God.
Yes. Okay, what it was is Josh Peck and Drake Bell are collaborating on something new, and people thought it was a new Drake and Josh show, but it's not. So.
Okay.
But almost.
Thank God. Thank God.
They announced a new run of Pixar shorts for Disney Plus, including a series with Forky, the character voiced by Tony Hale in Toy Story 4. and a Monsters, Inc. workplace comedy. These will probably be funny and cute, because Pixar shorts are usually funny and cute. And then Kevin Feige came out to do a Marvel block. They announced Avengers Endgame will be on Disney Plus starting December 11th, but not at launch. So some weird contractual window there. But then they talked about some of the other shows that we learned about earlier this summer. So first they talked about What If. Feige explained that every episode of What If will take an MCU film and change one thing. So, for instance, they showed footage of Peggy Carter getting the enhancements instead of Steve Rogers, and she had a Union Jack shield instead of an American shield, and that episode will be called Captain Carter, and the still frames that came out from that looked awesome.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun. Loki, they announced, will be a 6-hour show. Tom Hiddleston said it will answer all your questions about the Tesseract. Not much there. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, a couple of casting details. Emily Van Camp will be returning as Sharon Carter. She was Sharon Carter in Winter Soldier and Civil War. Wyatt Russell will be joining the MCU as John Walker, known in the comics as the villain Super Patriot. I don't know who that is, Sean.
Sure. I can't picture Super Patriot off the top of my head, so sure. I'll take it. That sounds like a Captain America villain.
WandaVision, this is where we get some fun stuff. Feige said the goal is for WandaVision to be a half sitcom, half epic MCU adventure. Kat Dennings will be returning to the MCU as Darcy from the Thor movies. That's my favorite news.
Yes. Awesome.
Meow, meow.
Good.
Yes, so we're going to have Kat Dennings. Also Randall Park, who you probably don't remember was in the MCU because he was the FBI agent named Jimmy Woo in Ant-Man and the Wasp. But Randall Park is a very, very funny guy, so I'm happy he's there. And Catherine Hahn will play Wanda and Vision's noisy next-door neighbor. Sean, WandaVision has gone from being the show I was most skeptical about to the one I think I'm most excited for.
Yeah, no, that's a good, the pitch of, it being about a weird, traumatized lady who's traumatized by her magic superpowers and the robot dude who's, semi-emotionless, trying to have a relationship with each other while living in, the world. That is a good pitch. And, leaning into that, the sitcom-y elements of that relationship, I think is a good idea.
And having Kat Dennings, Randall Park, Catherine Hahn, those are all the kinds of actors you want in that show.
Exactly, yes. To pump up the humor. For sure.
Yes. Then they announced 3 new TV shows for Disney+. These will probably not be in those first 2 years, like the Phase 4 era, but these are ones that will be coming probably in 2022. The first one was Miss Marvel, and this is specifically the Kamala Khan version of Miss Marvel, who was the first Muslim superhero in Marvel Comics. Do you have anything to say about that, Sean? Because you know these characters more.
Yeah, so Kamala, I've only read, kind of the first trade paperback of her stuff. She's a really cool character. That version of Miss Marvel is awesome. I think it's a character that it makes sense why you do a series versus a movie, especially when you already have, a Captain Marvel movie thing going. She's a character who's a little bit more down to earth, a little bit more like Spider-Man level character or Daredevil level character, but not gritty in the way that Daredevil can be. She's very fun, very light, very kind of peppy, sort of energetic character. So that's a really good pull. And it's something that I've been waiting. It seemed like they were going to eventually do something with that character because she is of all the new Marvel superheroes they've done recently, she is the one that feels like the biggest breakout. It's her and Miles Morales as Spider-Man are the two that have really attached and gotten a significant fan base. So it seems like they were eventually going to get to her and do something, and so it's cool for them to confirm that they're gonna make a show about her.
Yes, and Feige did note, and I think this is interesting, that they want to introduce her on Disney Plus before moving her to big screen. So they do want to have her in the movies at some point, and I think just that they are openly saying they want to do crossovers, back and forth between Disney Plus and the movies, is really exciting.
Yeah, and specifically with her, that's a really good idea because one of the big things about Miss Marvel in the comics is that she is a fan of the superheroes in that world. So she's a big fan of Captain Marvel, and she has a sort of fangirl kind of geek out when she meets Spider-Man and that kind of thing. So the idea of having her kind of star in her own TV show, be a little bit more ground level kind of on her own, and then allow her to have like a big moment where in a crossover movie or something where she gets to meet some of the characters she's been talking about in her TV show and has like posters of Thor on her wall or something. Like that is a really good idea, like of being able to merge the kind of the media properties you have available to you to kind of enhance an element of the character. Like there's a lot of potential to be able to do cool stuff with that.
And the other 2 shows they announced, again with no details, just that they're making these, were Moon Knight and She-Hulk. I know who She-Hulk is.
Yes.
I don't know who Moon Knight is, but She-Hulk makes me very excited. Which one are you fuck-yesing?
Both. Fucking hell, yes. Fucking A. Moon Knight. Yes. Hell yes. She-Hulk. Fuck yeah. Oh my god.
Tell us about them, Sean.
Okay, so Moon Knight is great because he's a really weird character. So I'm going to read because you posted into the notes a summary you found online, which I really like because it gets some of the weird stuff of Moon Knight, but not all of it. A former boxer and U.S. Marine, Mark Spector left the military to become an international mercenary. But when a mission gone wrong in Egypt left him betrayed and bleeding out in an archaeological dig site, followers of the ancient god Khonshu offered Spector up to their deity, who granted him a second chance at life, as well as enhanced strength and durability, which Spector took to become the vigilante crime fighter Moon Knight. So a big thing with Moon Knight is this thing of where he was killed. He's resurrected by the moon, the fake Egyptian moon god Khonshu, and one of the main things about the more interesting runs of Moon Knight is there's a couple of significant questions about the character. One is he has like a sort of like multiple personality disorder thing. So he kind of initially disguises himself as 3 different figures. All the names of them are escaping me. One of them is Mark Spector. And then eventually it starts to reveal that he's not just disguising himself as these people to get information, because Moon Knight is a very Batman-esque kind of detective vigilante figure. He's not just disguising himself as them, like he kind of understands them as being different aspects of his personality. And so there's a lot of kind of internal psychodrama he has about that stuff. And then also, for me, the most interesting Moon Knight stuff is the stuff where whether or not Khonshu is actually real is a question. Whether or not he was actually brought to life by an ancient, like, moon god, or that is just a delusion he has and he believes he's been brought back from the dead for the purpose of, like, enacting the justice of the moon among the criminals of the earth. Like, if that's, like, actually his mission, or if he's just insane. And so that kind of dynamic with him is the thing that makes Moon Knight really compelling, is like kind of not always understanding what his motivations are and what is real and what is a hallucination that he's having is really cool. So I like Moon Knight a lot. There was a very recent Moon Knight run I've been meaning to get to for a while, where they did like a big kind of visual redesign of the characters that people really like. So I don't know if they're going to pull from that like more modern popular run, or if they're going to pull from more of the stuff from like the 80s and 90s that I read that I really like. But Moon Knight's fucking cool. Super rad. Awesome. She-Hulk is rad because if you do She-Hulk right, they should make the show like big, colorful, funny, and goofy, because She-Hulk is she's a lady that just, so for me the She-Hulk stuff I really like is where she just loves the fact she has these superpowers and she's very in control of herself. So unlike the Hulk, she's not like, there are She-Hulk stories I think where it becomes about the drama of her like hulking out and stuff like that, but most of the She-Hulk stuff I've read, she's basically in control of her powers, and so she just likes going around as like a big muscled up green lady and beating the shit out of people and being a superhero, and she just has fun with it. And she's also a lawyer, so you can do if you want to do a like the TV show thing, you can have kind of a Daredevil-esque kind of like court drama element of her going out being a superhero and then having to deal with that stuff in the court. So yeah, she's very cool. She's a very fun character. And again, if you go kind of like big, colorful, goofy, and funny with it, I think you could have a lot of fun and make a really cool She-Hulk show. And for all 3 of these characters, Miss Marvel, Moon Knight, and She-Hulk, I think all of them are much better fits for a like TV model like Disney Plus than like, I think it would be very hard to make a She-Hulk, Moon Knight, or Miss Marvel movie. I think they would end up being very generic origin movies. And if you can just do the TV show with them, you can get the origin stuff out of the way and just get to all the like really interesting character stuff much faster. So I think it's a really smart pull to grab these different characters, and then eventually, hopefully, they can have cool appearances in the movies as well.
Awesome. I'm excited for all of that. And when we talk earlier about like Kevin Feige has a producerial imprint, the choice of projects here is what I mean. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like, man, if you teleported back in time to 2008 and told me that Iron Man movie will eventually lead to Moon Knight getting a TV show, I'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, how would Moon Knight ever get, like, Moon Knight is a character that barely shows up in any of the video games. Are you gonna, and he's gonna get a fucking movie? Like, he wasn't even in the original roster for Marvel Ultimate Alliance. He was a DLC character for Marvel Ultimate Alliance. Like, that's how obscure fucking Moon Knight is. Eventually he's gonna get his own TV show. That's fucking nuts.
Should we invent a new tier, Sean? It's not C tier, D tier, it's DLC level?
Yeah, exactly, yes. It's the DLC characters that somehow now are getting movies and TV shows made about them.
All right, that was it for Marvel. They then moved on to live-action television shows for Disney+. There is going to be a reality educational show called The World According to Jeff Goldblum, where Jeff Goldblum, the actor, will travel the world learning about things like, and I quote, sneakers, ice cream, and denim. I don't know what this will be, but I know I'll watch it. That sounds fucking great.
Yeah, the trailer for this show was so good. Just Jeff Goldblum talking about the weird shit, like intercut with shots from the show of him going around and talking to people about sneakers and stuff. Yeah, it was... I have no idea what the full structure of it's going to look like, but it was a very, very delightful trailer, and I like Jeff Goldblum, so I will watch this show almost certainly.
Okay, there's a show called Encore, where Kristen Bell, who obviously from many things, like The Good Place and Veronica Mars, but for Disney, she's the voice of Anna in Frozen. She reunites High School Musical casts and has them perform their shows from high school again as adults. This aired in some form on ABC a few years ago and was acclaimed, but didn't get ratings traction and was very short-lived. So they're trying it again on Disney+, and I do know a couple of TV critics who were excited about that. Certainly sounds like an interesting idea for a musical TV series.
Yeah, I had never heard about that. So it's an interesting concept that is also like... It sounds like a thing that like somebody had a nightmare about, told someone else, and then they made a TV show about it. Because to most
really
people,
does.
I think the idea of like, oh shit, you have to put on the musical or the play you did in high school, but now you're like a 30-year-old person and you don't remember any of the lines, and like you didn't put your costume on, so you're out there on your underwear. Like, that's the nightmare everyone has had.
Well, you know, Kristen Bell, she's going to be kidnapping people and making them do musicals. It's going to be a real change of persona for her.
Yes.
No. All right. Then on to live-action movies. Again, all of these are direct to Disney+, not for theaters. The first one being Lady and the Tramp, the live-action remake of Lady and the Tramp, which I think we had all forgotten was the fourth live-action remake this year, but stealthily looks like the best one, honestly. The trailer is really cute. It's all real dogs. It's not CGI dogs, except their eyes and like mouths when they talk are clearly CGI, which is slightly creepy, but also that means we know they didn't put peanut butter in the dog's mouth and like make them try to talk, which means there was less animal abuse. So there you go. It stars Tessa Thompson and Justin Theroux as the titular dogs. It's also got Sam Elliott, Janelle Monáe, who's doing music for it, Benedict Wong, Yvette Nicole Brown, so awesome voice cast. And the trailer wasn't half bad. It's not a shot-for-shot remake. It actually showed a lot of scenes that aren't in the original, like the Lady and the Tramp riding on a Mark Twain-esque riverboat, kind of like the attraction at Disneyland, which I thought was a really cool shot. And those dogs are they're fucking awesome dogs, and they had them on the red carpet at this event, and those dogs are so cute. And, you know, I think I would probably be less excited for this movie if it was in theaters and I had to go pay for it, but if it is on a streaming service I'm already paying for, I would spend 90 minutes watching cute dogs. So I'm okay with that. It's going to be there on launch day, November 12th.
Sure, I think it's definitely better than, like, CGI dogs. If you just put dogs on screen...
It also,
and watch dogs.
I have to stress, it does look more creative than Aladdin or Lion King or any of those. And I do wonder if, like, the remakes for Disney Plus are going to get more latitude to just be a little more creative because they're not in theaters and expected to gross $1 billion.
Yeah. And it's like, it's Lady and the Tramp. It's not Aladdin or Lion King. Like, it's not like A-tier Disney stuff, so it makes sense.
Oh, fuck. I love Disney, and the Lady and the Tramp is absolutely A-tier.
I'm not talking about quality of the movie.
Okay.
I'm talking about, like, cultural penetration is what I mean.
That's a good point. Okay. Lady and the Tramp, if you only ever saw it on VHS as a kid, definitely get the DVD or Blu-ray, because that movie was produced in Cinerama widescreen 255:1. And there were 2 Disney movies they did that with. It was that and Sleeping Beauty. And I think those are maybe the best animated classical Disney movies because they are these giant widescreen experiences. Gorgeous, gorgeous movie. And I think a lot of people don't know that if you only saw it cropped on VHS. So I just have to make that recommendation. And who knows, maybe the animated movie will also be on Disney Plus, and you can watch it there. Okay. Which, actually, that's their entire strategy, because if you watch the live action, it'll probably do a little pop-up that says, do you want to watch the animated? And it'll keep you on the service longer.
And then you'll just click on that and then never watch the live action one, because it's like, just let me watch the animated movie, because it's probably better.
Yes. They are doing a live action movie called Togo, which stars Willem Dafoe and a team of sled dogs. I believe it's the true story of Balto. Balto is the sled dog who famously rode along the Adirondacks or something to get people medicine. And they made a movie about that in the 90s. I think Warner's did that. But Balto actually was not the hero dog. It was a dog named Togo, and I think they're doing the more true story of Balto. So, I don't know. I just read Willem Dafoe and a team of sled dogs, and I'm like, I'll watch that. Sure. I hope he does his Green Goblin persona. And he's like, he and the dogs are settling down at night, and he goes, sleep.
Yeah.
There is a holiday comedy launching with Disney Plus called Noel that stars Anna Kendrick and Bill Hader, and that part of the synopsis sounds fun. The next part of the synopsis is that Anna Kendrick plays Santa's daughter, Noel Kringle, which sounds a little on the nose, let's be fucking frank. And she is sad because her brother Nick Kringle, played by Bill Hader, is supposed to be the next Santa, because I guess Santa is passed down by gender, not by age. So that's kind of fucked up.
I mean, Santa Claus, old Saint Nick, is very old. He's a bit, when Grandpa shows up at Thanksgiving, he's going to say some things that you're not going to agree with.
Exactly. So he wants to be the next, or he is going to be the next Santa, not her, but he doesn't want it. So there's family drama. The most interesting thing about this movie, Sean, is I swear to God, watching that trailer, they are reusing the sets from the Santa Claus movies with Tim Allen. They are absolutely the sets from the Santa Claus movies that they just had in cold storage, and they pulled out and made a movie with Anna Kendrick. And I like Anna Kendrick and Bill Hader. That movie looked like, I don't know, they really needed a paycheck.
I mean, yeah, that synopsis sounds like it is just ripped from that weird trend in the mid 2000s where there was just all these awful fucking Santa Claus Christmas movies that were they're PG-13 or something. There's supposed to be a little bit edgy, but they're still kids movies. It's just what the Bad Santa. It's just what the fuck was that? Why did those? There's a dozen of those fucking kinds of movies from that.
Well, and this is not edgy. This is very kidsy.
Okay.
It's for little kids. It's more like the Santa Claus movies. I would put it in the zone of the Santa Claus, Arthur Christmas, Rise of the Guardians, all the movies that are about Santa Claus as a legal enterprise, which is really fucking weird.
Yeah. They just made a lot of weird Santa movies around that period that this sounds like. So
they announced
I don't need it.
Yeah. They announced a new Muppets series, because if you forgot, Disney owns the Muppets. Of course they do.
I mean, if you don't know who owns a certain property, it's probably just Disney.
Yes. It's called The Muppet Studios. It's billed as an unscripted short-form series, but they had no other details. Probably a bad idea. The last thing Disney did with the Muppets was that weird ABC sitcom where Kermit fucks another pig, and it's a behind-the-scenes Office-style comedy, and that was horrible and nobody liked it. And this kind of sounds like more of the same, so I don't know. I would just like another Muppets movie, because the last 2 Muppets movies were fucking great, and I would like someone other than Disney to own the goddamn Muppets, but whatever. Then Kathleen Kennedy came out for Star Wars. They had a lot of Star Wars stuff. First off, she showed a big graphic that laid out all the different movies and shows on the official timeline. And I thought this was funny. They have new timeline distinctions. So the prequels are now the Age of Republic. The original trilogy is the Age of Rebellion, and the sequel trilogy is the Age of Resistance, which really tells you that rebellion didn't accomplish a whole lot.
Yeah, that's the one where you're like, where it makes you, it again puts into perspective how poorly thought out the world building of the sequel trilogy is, that you hit Age of Resistance. Like, you go Age of Rebellion to Age of Resistance, and that is such an awkward transition. This is also, a convenient, if, the Wachowskis are having a hard time coming up with the subtitle for the new Matrix movie, they could do Matrix Republic, Matrix Rebellion, or Matrix Resistance, all are E-words. So they're right there for you. Or if, on the reverse end, if Disney's having a hard time coming up with the next age for Star Wars, it could be Age of the Reloaded. That would be badass.
Actually, the Matrix Resistance, I would put good money on the next Matrix being called the Matrix Resistance. That's actually a really good title.
Yeah, it would make sense.
Okay. Sean, you probably like this. The Clone Wars, the movie they're doing to finish the original Clone Wars series, is premiering February 2020.
Hell yes. Give me that. Please, I want it.
Really, actually a little sooner than I thought, because we knew it was a Disney Plus exclusive, but not at launch. That's just 4 months from launch, so that's really close. Yeah. Then this fucking news. I knew they were doing this, but I didn't believe it was real. Diego Luna and Alan Tudyk came out for the Cassian Andor show. And if you just went, who? Like the guy in Guardians of the Galaxy when he hears about Star-Lord, Cassian Andor is the dude in Rogue One who is ostensibly a spy. I don't think we ever actually see him doing any spying. He's a spy for the Rebellion who it's not Felicia Day. Felicity Jones, her character, teams up with, and then they die in each other's arms at the end of the movie when they all die. So this is a prequel about Cassian Andor and his robot buddy voiced by Alan Tudyk. Sean, if you did a big ranking of every Star Wars character who has ever appeared in a piece of, let's say, theatrical Star Wars media, let's not go crazy and do the EU, right?
Right.
So let's say theatrical Star Wars media, you list every character and list who do we want new shows about. And you might have near the top Obi-Wan, Boba Fett, Yoda, just whoever would be at the top, right? If you went to the exact other opposite side, where mostly people are ranked at the bottom because it's like, who the fuck is that? How far down do you think Cassian Andor is?
I mean, it would legitimately be hard. I mean, any random alien in the background of a scene in the prequels or the original trilogy literally rank higher for me than Cassian Andor. When you said because I had not heard anyone out loud say the phrase, the Cassian Andor show, and when you said that, immediately in my head, it was like a Full House style opening with fucking Diego Luna turning to the camera and smiling at the Cassian Andor show. It's a fucking 90s sitcom. Rogue One, one of the biggest issues with Rogue One is that it just never spent enough time with the characters for me to give a shit about any of them. The only one I kind of cared about was the Donnie Yen character, and that had nothing to do with the character and 100% to do with just Donnie Yen is a naturally charismatic, likable actor, and I just want to see him and stuff.
And he has a cool death,
Yeah, he has a cool death and a cool character design, and it's Donnie Yen, and he's cool. He gets a cool fight. Other than that, I just don't care about any, I would take the fucking Saw Gerrera TV show, I would rather have him. Even among the Rogue One characters, the fucking Cassian Andor is one of the least interesting ones. So
I mean, here's the thing. If Rogue One was not a movie, and Diego Luna had not been in Star Wars before, if they just announced that they were doing a Star Wars show with Diego Luna as a spy and Alan Tudyk as his robot buddy, I would give that 2 thumbs up sight unseen of that sounds fun. Diego Luna is a great actor. Alan Tudyk is actually fun in Rogue One. And Alan Tudyk is a fun actor. So I
have to be honest, I cannot remember the character that Alan Tudyk played. The droid that he voiced. I do not remember it at all. I completely excised that part of the movie from my memory for whatever reason.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If it were just the actors doing a Star Wars show, and I think that's why they're doing this, is because they have Diego Luna, and he happens to be both a very good actor who is also popular in other territories like Mexico that Disney would probably like Disney Plus to be big in, right?
Yeah.
And so who knows? It could totally be good because it doesn't need to have major Rogue One connections, I guess. It's just Rogue One is the worst Star Wars movie.
Yes.
Cassian Andor is one of the more disappointing characters because he had potential from the worst Star Wars movie. And there's just, like, I'd take the Jar Jar show over this 100 times.
Yes.
I actually kind of like Jar Jar. So this just kind of baffles me. But
yeah,
let's move on to something that gets me very excited, which is The Mandalorian. Because The Mandalorian looks fucking rad as shit. Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni came out to talk about The Mandalorian. I actually had forgotten Dave Filoni was involved with this, Sean. But Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are the two creative heavies on The Mandalorian. Jon Favreau wrote the first episode. Dave Filoni directed it. I assume they swap roles at some point in it. But Jon Favreau, we all know from the Iron Man movies and Jungle Book and Lion King and all that stuff. But Dave Filoni has been the main guy on all the animated series for a decade plus now, for the Clone Wars and Rebels and Resistance and all of those. So, I mean, honestly, you've got, if you were going to get anybody involved in a live-action Star Wars show, you should probably go get Dave Filoni, and Jon Favreau is talented in a lot of different ways, so I am glad they are the two heavies on this. They came out to talk about it, and a lot of these people we knew were in the show, but I had not seen the cast all together in one place. Fucking hell if this is not the most impressive cast assembled for a Star Wars movie. Pedro Pascal, who from Game of Thrones, is the main actor. Gina Carano is in it. Nick Nolte, Carl Weathers, Giancarlo Esposito from Breaking Bad and Do the Right Thing and a million other awesome things. Ming-Na Wen, which is huge. Taika Waititi, who we love. And Werner fucking Herzog. Are all in this show. It will be an 8-episode first season. It's going to air weekly. Disney Plus is not doing the simul drops like all the episodes at once, which I like. I like shows that air weekly. The first episode is launching on November 12th with the service. Favreau said the second season is already underway in some level of production. Not announced on stage, but I did notice that Ludwig Göransson is scoring this show. And if you don't know who he is, he scored Black Panther. He won an Oscar for it. He is also the guy who produces all of Childish Gambino's music. He's awesome. And then they showed the trailer, which is a bunch of really great imagery that ends with Werner Herzog saying, "Bounty hunting is a complicated business." And that is, I think that's the best trailer for any Star Wars thing released in the Disney era. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Like, it's because it's leveraging the imagery of Star Wars really well, but it never feels like it's pandering the way that a lot of the sequel trilogy trailers feel like they try to pander to you with, oh, you like let's, you know, have this big majestic shot of like the Millennium Falcon or whatever with like for the first trailer for Force Awakens. This feels like it's knows how to use like a shot of a bunch of stormtrooper helmets on fucking like spears in the ground, which is basically the first shot of that trailer. And it's like, that is such an evocative image that is also not something I've really seen much of in Star Wars, at least not in like live action Star Wars. There's some similar stuff in like Clone Wars and Rebels. Like you can get some of that imagery from some of that kind of stuff, or certainly some of the comic books, but just having this like really slick live action stuff using that kind of Star Wars imagery, like because I was like you, I knew that Jon Favreau was attached to it. I did not know that Dave Filoni was attached to The Mandalorian until all this stuff came out, and so that makes this make much more sense to me. It feels like this is like a big live action version of one of like the darker episodes from Clone Wars, is what it kind of visually looked like to me in terms of how like the visual language and the way it was using the Star Wars imagery. And yeah, like it looks great. There's just some really awesome shots in that trailer. There's a great moment of where the trailer cuts right before something happens, where there's like a guy diving through one of those like sci-fi big circle doors that are like those big weird circle doors, and it's about to close on that dude like halfway through because the Mandalorian has shot the control panel with his blaster, and so the thing's about to like cut this dude in half, and it cuts right there. It's a great fucking trailer. Lots of cool imagery, great cast. Like the shot of seeing Giancarlo Esposito in like an Imperial officer uniform was a great, just like moment of like, hell yeah, like I never thought about him being in Star Wars, but holy shit, that looks great.
Carl Weathers.
Yes, Carl Weathers.
I love it.
It's a
and
great
this is
trailer.
all before you get to Werner Herzog Sean, when my initial reaction is when I heard Werner Herzog talk about bounty hunting in the Star Wars universe, my thought was, I can die happy now. I didn't realize that's what I needed. I can leave this Earth. I've got it.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
It's so good. I'm really excited for it. It looks like it knows exactly what it wants to be. It knows how to fill like this niche that has existed forever in Star Wars about like the cool bounty hunter thing has always been a thing in Star Wars fandom, in Star Wars media, but it's always been in the other stuff. And so seeing that get executed in live action according to, at least like based on the trailer, to like this degree of sort of excellence is very exciting in a way that I didn't realize I would have that kind of reaction to it. I was not like expecting going into it being like, oh yeah, no, I actually do really want this. Partially because it's been a while since I've been really invested in a piece of Star Wars media. Like Rebels has been over for a few years at this point. And Rebels doesn't have much cool bounty hunter shit. You have to go back to the Cad Bane character from the Clone Wars to go back to when the last time I was excited about cool bounty hunter stuff in Star Wars. And that's been a long time.
Because I also think, it's an open secret that Disney has been trying to do a Boba Fett something for a long time. They almost made a movie about Boba Fett, and it eventually became this. And I think this is so smart because you get all the upside of Boba Fett, which is the really cool costume and everything, with none of the downside, which is literally everything else about Boba Fett. So you can just create a new character, new actor. You have none of the baggage of Boba Fett, but you get to do the really cool design and aesthetic. It's such a smart idea. Like, this is the sweet spot. This is, I think, what we've been wanting. If you are going to do something in the vein of the original trilogy, this looks right. And I have to say, it is amazing how much The Mandalorian ate Episode 9's lunch at D23 this year. Because everyone is talking about this. No one is talking about what they announced for Rise of Skywalker. Like, other than Rey getting a double-sided lightsaber sounds cool. Like, especially because the fact they didn't put any footage out. I actually wonder if Mandalorian will like depress the box office of Episode 9 because people will be like, hey, I've got my cool Star Wars shit at home or on my phone,
Yeah.
So, all right, that's The Mandalorian. But then Kathleen Kennedy had one more thing for us, and it was confirmation that there will be an Ewan McGregor Obi-Wan Kenobi series happening for Disney+. Scripts are being written. It shoots next year. Ewan McGregor was on stage. He says it's 4 hours long, and it will be set 8 years after Revenge of the Sith. Fuckity fuck yeah.
Yes, thank God. Like, the one thing we wanted, like, salvaged from the fallout of Solo, A Star Wars Story, which was the idea that they were toying around with this idea of bringing Ewan McGregor back to do an Obi-Wan thing. And this is even better. Like, having it be a TV show, like, same thing with The Mandalorian. Like, these feel like ideas that fit much better into a TV show format than trying to make the movie version of having Obi-Wan go out on one more adventure. Like, being able to spend time with Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan, like, in quieter moments, like, with him hanging out in Tatooine and stuff like that, that's what I want, and a movie would not have as much time to be able to do that kind of stuff. So this becoming a TV thing instead is way better, and just thank God Ewan McGregor gets to play Obi-Wan again. Like, he deserves it. We deserve it. We need it. Give it to us. I want to see him just fucking get back into those robes and do cool Obi-Wan stuff.
And if all of this works out and they do more shows, I know not everyone loved the Solo movie, and you and I on this podcast were kind of mixed on it. I did really like that actor as Han Solo, and I liked some of what they set up. That would be a good way to continue that at some point. It's like a 6-episode TV series. Like, I would have lots of fun watching that Han Solo and Chewbacca just do some heists. Why not?
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like, if Solo A Star Wars Story had been a TV thing instead, and then could have spent way more time with him, like, in the Imperial Academy or something like that. Like, that would have been a more interesting way to execute on that idea. So that's a good example of, like, that kind of thing being turned into a movie, and because it has to fit into a movie form factor, a lot of, like, the interesting story stuff that Solo could have tackled, it wasn't able to tackle. So it ended up becoming this very by-the-numbers prequel thing where they just have to check off every box about the character Whereas if you did the TV show version, you could still check off those boxes, but you check off one box in Episode 1 and another box in Episode 3, And it's not just all contained in one 2-hour thing.
All right. So that was the end of D23 Day 1. Day 2 started with Star Wars again. Rise of Skywalker had a showing at the top of the panel. They did a new poster. It's got Rey and Kylo fighting under the specter of Palpatine. Okay poster, not extraordinary.
Whatever. Like, the visage of Palpatine in, like, the whole top third of the poster, I think, like, is depressing. Because it's just so clear that, like, these characters are never going to have got, like, be able to get, like, the movie that is just about these characters, and they're going to exist in the shadow of other stuff the entire time.
Literally on that poster.
Yeah, because clearly Palpatine is not, it's not going to be like an extended cameo. It's going to be a big part of that movie. And that's, I think that's a bad idea.
They showed new footage to everyone in attendance, but they did not share it online. The reaction was positive. There is apparently a scene where Rey is in a cool black hoodie and she has a double-sided red lightsaber. The note I saw, I forget where I got this from, I think it was on Twitter. The saber folds in the middle and folds up into something like a tuning fork, so that's cool. It's kind of funny, actually. Do you ever watch Jenny Nicholson stuff on YouTube?
No.
She's really funny. She does, like, she got famous for the Suicide Squad sales pitch video, but she does these, like, very nerdy videos in her bedroom that are very, very funny. And she did one the day before D23 because she knew they were going to show new Rise of Skywalker stuff. So she does, for all the Star Wars movies, she makes a bingo card of predictions of things she thinks are going to be in the movies. And she made one for Rise of Skywalker, and because she wanted it out there before we got new footage. And one of her predictions that she was very confident in is that Rey would build for herself a double-sided lightsaber because in the first movie she used that bow staff kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I thought that was funny that was, like, immediately confirmed by the footage they showed. Jenny Nicholson also back in the day predicted that The Last Jedi would have some kind of space horse race sequence when there was no reason to predict that would be in the movie, so it's kind of eerie. But anyway, I would recommend you go watch that video because it was funny. And I do like the idea of Rey getting some kind of Darth Maul-esque lightsaber.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that, like, makes me cautious about it is the, like, tease of it being a red lightsaber of, like, oh, is Rey going to fall to the dark side? Makes me wonder if that is more of a, like, fantasy sequence in the actual movie that, like, it's some Abrams bullshit. Because we have also seen her use the Anakin Skywalker lightsaber in the trailer, even though that lightsaber was destroyed in The Last Jedi. So who knows what the lightsaber situation is actually going to be like in the full movie is, I think, still an open question, even with them showing that footage.
It is, because as I said at the time, in the first Episode 9 trailer, it's entirely possible that lightsaber is not actually in the movie, because Disney has done a lot of things where they edit trailers for spoilers, like all of the stuff with Thor's eye in Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah.
So, entirely possible. I think the point is what you just said. We don't actually know what the lightsaber situation is. So anyway, Episode 9, but you know what? We're getting our Obi-Wan show, and The Mandalorian looks rad as shit. So there we go.
There's good looking Star Wars stuff on the horizon, even if, you know, I'm eager for Episode 9 to come out just so that this can be done. We can put it behind us as a people.
I think Disney Plus is the best thing that's happened to Star Wars in a while, because we are getting all these shows. They're going to get to experiment. We're getting the end of the Clone Wars, which means we could possibly get a lot more Star Wars animation if that does well. Like, I think Disney Plus is what Star Wars needed very badly.
Yeah, because it's just Star Wars just suffocating in the movie space because Disney was not willing to go out further on a limb with some of that stuff. And
kind of couldn't, because, you know, Star Wars is mostly not movies. It was 6 movies and a shit ton of books and stuff, right? So, like, movies were not the main thing for Star Wars for a really long time. So, yeah, let's move on. Ryan Coogler came out on stage to show off the Black Panther 2 logo and the release date, May 6th, 2022. So they officially announced Black Panther 2. Coogler did note it's not going to be called Black Panther 2. It's going to have a different title. But they are making the movie. It's the May time slot for 2022. Kind of a long time to wait, but we know there's a lot of good stuff coming in the meantime.
Yep.
All right. More on the Eternals movie, which is the 2020... Is that... Yeah, that's for 2020.
Yeah,
because we're done with 2019. And they did announce that Kit Harington, who had been rumored to be joining the MCU, is confirmed. He's playing Dane Whitman, who is a character in the story who's not one of the Eternals. But that makes 2 Game of Thrones actors, because you also have Richard Madden, who played Robb Stark, and Kit Harington played Jon Snow. So they technically not brothers on the show, but they thought they were brothers.
Yeah, I mean, now that Game of Thrones is over, now all the Game of Thrones people can go be in the Marvel stuff because they're like the biggest group of popular actors that have not been in Marvel stuff yet because they were in the TV show for so long.
Oh, man, it's just they can fly free, Sean. They can fly free. I'm excited to see what Kit Harington does when he's not having to scowl as Jon Snow.
Yeah, I liked him a lot in Game of Thrones, even when they gave him utter shit for most of the end of that show.
Oh, man. Speaking of that, Sean, there's a trailer for a new rom-com out. It's called Last Christmas. It's directed by Paul Feig, who did like Bridesmaids and the new Ghostbusters, right. And he's a great director. Everyone loves Paul Feig. And it's his new comedy, and it stars Emilia Clarke, and it's like a rom-com at Christmas. Watch that trailer because Emilia Clarke looks happier than I have ever seen a human being because she is not in Game of Thrones. Like, she looks so radiantly joyful not to be on Game of Thrones. It is amazing.
Yeah, so it is great that we're just like injecting all these amazing actors and actresses back into the market now that Game of Thrones is over. All
right. Dwayne Johnson came out to start off their segment on all the live-action theatrical Disney movies. He showed off footage from Jungle Cruise, which is the new adventure film based on the ride at Disneyland. Co-stars Emily Blunt. Apparently Johnson rode onto stage on an actual boat, and The Rock said, "We made a movie about men kicking ass and saving the girl." Which, I don't know. That's a weird thing to say, but who knows?
Whatever.
We still have only ever had one movie be successful based on a ride, and that was Pirates of the Caribbean. So,
and then they kept on trying to do another one based on that ride, and they couldn't do another good one. So
no. All right. They showed off the new Mulan movie, which continues to look and sound really good, although no one on stage wanted to mention the giant elephant in the room, which is that Hong Kong citizens who are currently in a massive protest movement, because if you don't know, Hong Kong is a special administrative region of the People's Republic of China. Hong Kong is a separately governed, it's like its own city-state within China, and there has been a lot of intrusion by the Chinese government, so Hong Kong citizens are doing mass protests, and Hong Kong citizens are very mad at the star of Mulan, Liu Yifei, who is the Chinese-American star of the movie, because she made social media posts that echoed pro-police talking points from state-sponsored mainland Chinese media. I think the line was something like, "Go police, you can beat me up any day." There's kind of a controversy here that I actually think with Mulan being so aimed at the Chinese market could kind of blow up in Disney's face at some point. So just giant asterisk on Mulan for now.
Yeah. Well, a good thing I wasn't planning on seeing it anyways. So okay. I can watch it and be, safe in knowing that I'm not helping the Chinese police, crack down on resistance.
All right. There's a Cruella de Vil movie coming out, Sean, because of course there fucking is. Emma Stone is playing Cruella. There was a picture. I don't fucking get it. Especially because, they already did 2 Cruella de Vil movies back in the day. They did the 101 and 102 Dalmatians with Glenn Close. So, this one's already been remade in live action. What the fuck does he... This is our second 101 Dalmatians live action reboot.
Yeah, this is when before we started recording, Jonathan, we were talking, and I mentioned this as I couldn't tell at some point what was real and what was fake out of the D23 stuff because the poster for the Cruella de Vil thing, I everyone says it's Emma Stone. I'm sure it is Emma Stone. It just looks like someone photoshopped Helena Bonham Carter into that fucking poster. It just looks like her. Not her today. It looks like her from 10 years ago or something. It's so I was so convinced for so long that was just a joke I saw scrolling through Twitter that someone made a fake Cruella de Vil movie live action movie poster, but no, it's actually real because why not? Fuck it.
So if you're doing a movie about Cruella de Vil, you obviously have to make her sympathetic in some way because she's the protagonist, kind of like with Maleficent, right? But Cruella de Vil's motivation is she wants to kill and skin puppies. What good reason are we going to learn? Did a puppy kill her father? What is going to be the tragic backstory that makes her want to justifiably skin puppies?
Yeah, and I think it's a big ask, and I guess they've tried to do it once with Maleficent, and now they have to do it again. It's a big ask to try to make villains whose names are literally synonyms for like anger and villainy and evil and turn those into like sympathetic characters. Like that's a big one. Like it's, you know, it's fucking Maleficent and Cruella de Vil. Those are evil people. Like I don't care. Like you can't be named Cruella de Vil and not be evil. Your name is Cruella de Vil. Fuck off.
All right, then Pixar had a slot. They announced 2 Pixar movies for 2020. First up is Pete Docter's new movie. Pete Docter is the guy who did Up, Monsters, Inc., Inside Out. And he wrote all, like... No, I'm thinking of Andrew Stanton, but he has written other Pixar movies. Like him and Andrew Stanton are kind of like the 2 original Pixar guys who have not serially sexually harassed employees. The other being John Lasseter, who did serially sexually harass employees. But Pete Docter's great. We love Pete Docter. He's got a new movie called Soul. I could not, without being in the room, Sean, I could not fully tell what the premise of this was, and even people in the room said it's pretty high concept, but it is something about a jazz teacher played by Jamie Foxx who learns to access his personified inner soul, voiced by Tina Fey. Daveed Diggs from Hamilton is also in it. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross are doing the score, which is really cool. It's also Pixar's first ever movie with a black lead, which... It's their 23rd movie in 25 years. Whoa. Whoa. I don't know if you want to market that, Pixar, that it took you that long, because, whoa. That's bad.
Yeah. Because what would have been, for Disney's animated stuff, was it Princess and the Frog? Was that... I guess Pocahontas is Native American, so you have a person of color.
And Pixar has done people of color. They did Coco a couple years ago, which was Mexico. But yeah, Disney would have had Princess and the Frog. If you go back far enough, there's stuff like Song of the South, obviously. But I don't know if you want to claim that as representation because it's bad representation. But it does exist. So yeah, I mean, actually, Disney has had a ton between Princess and the Frog and Moana and Big Hero 6 was Asian characters. So like Disney's been okay about it. Pixar has been overwhelmingly white and male because everyone who works there is white and male. So, I mean, good for them. I do think, like, we're finally making a movie with a black lead. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if 23 movies in 25 years you get to be proud of that, you know? But
yeah,
I don't
I'm more
blame
interested in how the premise of this movie sort of sounds like it's a Persona game. Like, there's something about, like, this jazz teacher has awakened to his true self.
The screens they showed looked like the animation style is really cool. That's a great voice cast, and Pete Docter has never made anything less than an A+ movie, so I am excited for that. Pete Docter is good. They also showed off Onward, which we actually already knew about this one. This is the new movie by Dan Scanlon, who directed Monsters University. It stars Chris Pratt and Tom Holland as elf brothers, and they announced Julia Louis-Dreyfus voices their mother, which is cool. Julia Louis-Dreyfus is one of the best actors on the planet. I thought the initial teaser trailer for this was, like, unbelievably bad. Like, I cringed hard when I saw it in the theater because it's like our world but everything replaced by elf stuff, like very Shrek to me. But it's Pixar, it's probably not going to be that. Who knows? They did show more footage in the auditorium and people seemed to respond well to it, so I would, I'll reserve judgment until it's out. The trailer looked bad, but good people are working on it, so there you go.
I'm with you on that trailer, though. Now once you said Chris Pratt and Tom Holland, I remembered that trailer, and it was not good.
It's probably the worst ad I've ever seen for a Pixar thing, but Pixar also has a tradition that their first ads are not actual scenes from the movie. So I would stress we actually have not seen anything from the movie yet.
Right.
Disney Animation, though, I thought kind of stole the show because they have a new movie called Raya and the Last Dragon, by first-time directors but long-time Disney animators Paul Briggs and Dean Wellens. It comes out Thanksgiving 2020, and this is a movie that kind of continues that kind of cultural circle they've been doing, where this is about Southeast Asian culture, and it's got the creative teams behind Big Hero 6 and Moana, with scholars and researchers from Bali, Cambodia, and Vietnam contributing. They've kind of had a history in these last couple movies of trying to get a brain trust to kind of help with the diversity effort. Disney called it an epic fantasy adventure with the vibe of a Hong Kong action movie, and it has a dragon named Sisu who is voiced by Awkwafina, which is an awesome sentence. And I just think it sounds like a cool subject. The story sounded kind of cool. It's got kind of a very mythic vibe to it. And, you know, Disney animation has had a actually really good track record as of late. Better than Pixar, which has been really up and down for a couple of years. Their ups have been high, but their downs have been The Good Dinosaur, which hurt me. So this sounds good.
Yeah, no, that I had not heard about this before. So, that does sound very cool.
And that, Sean, for now at least, closes the book on D23. They might have more today on Sunday, but I have not been obviously checking Twitter while we've been recording. So if there was more, I don't know about it. That was enough news for now.
Yeah, Disney will continue to drop weird news bullshit on us forever, constantly. And we will never be able to escape it, because that is the world we live in now. We live in Disney's world.
I'll say this. I do think after all of this, like, it's really clear Disney Plus is going to be a really good service. I think they are making a lot of smart decisions, and I think Disney Plus opens a lot of exciting avenues for all the IP Disney has, including, like we said, Star Wars feels like it's really going to benefit from this. I think Marvel is really going to benefit from this. I think hopefully it will allow them to make some kind of exciting live action movies, because in terms of, like, the animated movies Disney announced sounded really good. The live-action movies for theaters looked awful. The live-action movies for Disney Plus sounded like they could be kind of fun. So I'm really curious. I still think, like, if anything's going to shake up the dynamic that streaming has had in the last couple of years, where Netflix is, like, super dominant and Amazon and Hulu are sort of down here making more artsy projects to try to compete on a different tier, I think Disney Plus could be the thing that finally shifts up that dynamic. Because I'll say this, like, I do not have a reason personally to have Netflix year-round. My parents have Netflix, and I borrow their passwords sometimes, but I don't watch Netflix much. Amazon has stuff that is more of my interest, generally. Disney Plus is the first streaming service in a while where I'm like, I actually want this and want to subscribe to it, and there's a lot I want to watch. But then, as you said earlier, Sean, there's also the thought of, but good God, to quote Kanye West, no one man should have all that power.
Yeah, it is definitely, like, I feel so conflicted about the, like, they announced, like, 5 or 6 things that made me super excited, like Moon Knight, like, seeing Mandalorian stuff. I mean, like, the Obi-Wan, the TV show, like, all of those are things I desperately want to see, and at the same time, it is also, like, I wish that all of that stuff could be happening and different companies were doing it. Like, I wish that, like, Marvel could be making its stuff and not be part of Disney. And I wish that Star Wars could be making its stuff and not be part of Disney. It's scary. Like when I watched because they put out a trailer for the Disney Plus, like, whole service, and I watched it just out of curiosity. And it was kind of scary seeing, because it was not stuff for generally footage of the new stuff. Like, other than, I think there's, like, some of the footage from the trailers they've shown, but it was mostly just, like, existing media properties that are going to be on Disney Plus, and just all of, like, the Star Wars footage and the Marvel movies footage and the classic Disney footage, and then, like, there are, like, 5 or 6 scenes from, like, The Simpsons and stuff like that.
Oh, I keep forgetting about The Simpsons.
Yeah, all of that shit together is, like, weird. And knowing that this is not Netflix, where it's like, you know, Netflix could put together a trailer and it would have, like, here's shots of The Office and Friends and Breaking Bad and, well, all the shit that's on
but
on
The
Netflix.
Office and Friends are both going off Netflix next year.
Yes, yeah, I'm just saying whatever was, the reason those were on the top of my head is because they're leaving the service. But in, like, Stranger Things and, like, a bunch of stuff, and most of the things that would be in that trailer are not things that are actually made by Netflix. They're just licensed deals, right? Like,
well, but here's the thing. Here's my distinction I would make, though, Sean, is Netflix is moving more and more towards a world where they don't license things. Disney Plus has the breadth that Netflix had a couple years ago when they still had to license things. They are increasingly in a form, and it's 2 things. It's that Netflix wants to own more stuff because it is more financially viable to own things than to license them. It's much simpler for worldwide distribution. But also, everybody else is building streaming services to compete. So, like, the reason The Office and Friends are leaving Netflix is that NBC and Warner Brothers are both developing competing streaming services and view those as killer apps. So we're getting into a world where streaming services are going to be comprised mainly of things that company owns, not things they license. And in that world, Disney is going to be the only game in town that can have the kind of breadth that people signed up for Netflix in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. So nobody, like, the way that the streaming market has moved, nobody has the capacity to compete with Disney. Like, it's just not feasible. because nobody has that much IP that they could possibly leverage. And Disney, and the only reason Disney has the IP to leverage is because they have spent the past 10 years or so going around and buying up everything they could. And so they bought Marvel, they bought Lucasfilm, and then they bought Fox, and now they have all of that shit they can put into their service. And it's it's not, in some ways, it's not that different from what Netflix used to be. Only instead of them licensing it, they just bought it outright, so they are the only one who can have it, and they have control of the whole model, which is the definition of monopoly. So, yes, here we go.
Because that's the thing, is Disney Plus, I can, if for no other reason that it has all the Simpsons, I will get Disney Plus. It happens to have a lot of other things I like. So, and I think it's hard to imagine the kind of person who would not want to watch at least something on Disney Plus.
Exactly.
And, they are starting with a low price point that makes it very inviting and consumer friendly, which is great. And they're doing the bundle with Hulu, which is also very price friendly, consumer friendly. It's just, in a couple of years, they're going to have us all locked in with an iron fucking death grip. And then what happens? So I don't know what's going on here. But do you want to move on to some fun research I did, Sean?
Yeah, because there was one last weird bit of movie news unrelated to the rest of this stuff that came out.
So, Sean, this week, the Uncharted movie, which Sony has been trying to make since 2009, so for a full 10 years, so based on the Uncharted video games, lost its 5th director in 10 years. Sony has been tripping over their own dick trying to make an Uncharted movie for over a decade now, and they have not succeeded. We did this exercise a couple weeks ago, Sean, with the Flash movie, and I thought it was really funny to put it all in one place, all the attempts to make a Flash movie. It's even funnier with Uncharted, because, Sean, I spent about 90 minutes researching this.
Jesus.
Because it's fucking fascinating. So, we're going to do the timeline. I'm going to read this out. I might ask you to read different bits here and there.
Okay.
But are you ready to go over the 10-year journey of Sony trying to make a video game movie?
Yeah, let's dig into this absolute fucking clusterfuck.
All right. We begin our tale in 2009, the year Barack Obama was inaugurated as president. Just to put that in perspective for you.
Yeah, a very different time for all of us.
Yeah. Nobody was encouraging Nazis from the White House lawn. Nobody. It was a different time. So, in 2009, the script was being written by Thomas Dean Donnelly and Joshua Oppenheimer, writers number 1 and number 2, respectively. It was being produced by superhero producer Avi Arad, Charles Grovin, and Alex Gartner. Around this time, Nathan Fillion, the star of Firefly, and I don't know if he was on Castle yet. I don't think so. I don't think Castle had started yet. Nathan Fillion.
I'm going to go onto Wikipedia and find out when Castle started, because I don't think it's that far away from this.
Yeah. So around that time, Nathan Fillion started a Twitter campaign to be considered for the role of Nathan Drake. So that was 2009. In 2010, Columbia, under Sony Pictures... Ooh, what have you got, Sean?
I've got some breaking fucking news, Jonathan. Castle started March 9, 2009. That's how old this is. This is started when Castle started.
And Castle ran 8 seasons, if I'm not mistaken.
It did. It ended in 2016.
Oh my god. So Nathan Fillion has been campaigning to play Nathan Drake for the entirety of Castle. Okay.
Exactly.
So 2010, Columbia TriStar, which is the studio under Sony Pictures, they don't really use the Columbia label anymore. Now they just call everything Sony. But back then it was Columbia, announced that David O. Russell, who in 2010 was yet to be an Oscar-nominated director for Silver Linings Playbook and American Hustle, it was announced that he would write and direct the film, becoming writer number 3 and director number 1. There's a great anecdote on Wikipedia here, Sean, that I would like you to read.
Okay. Following a screening of David O. Russell's film, The Fighter, he was approached by a fan of the Uncharted series who asked whether he had considered Nathan Fillion, star of Castle, for the role of Nathan Drake for the upcoming film due to the high number of requests for him to fulfill the role. Russell was unaware of the interest in Fillion and who he was and seemed to quickly dismiss the idea.
This is an important quote, because I want us to collect all the instances where it seems apparent the people making this movie knew nothing about Uncharted. That's really important. Mm-hmm. In late 2010, Mark Wahlberg, Marky Mark himself, let slip to MTV that he would be starring in the film, and intimates that Robert De Niro would be playing Nathan Drake's father and Joe Pesci Nathan Drake's uncle. It's important to note there is no uncle or father in the game Uncharted. Then there is this quote. Sean, read the quote.
I'm obviously in whatever David wants to do, but the idea of it is so off the charts. De Niro being my father, Pesci being my uncle. It's not going to be the watered-down version, that's for sure. All
right, Marky. May 2011, David O. Russell drops out.
What is ever going to happen to Nathan Drake's uncle, Joe Pesci, that we all know and love?
In July 2011, Neil Berger, who I believe was the director of The Illusionist with Edward Norton, which is a underestimated movie. That's a pretty good movie. He replaced David O. Russell, planning to start all over again from scratch, becoming writer number 4 and director number 2. 1 year later, in August 2012, Berger dropped out, and Marianne and Cormac Wibberley, the writers of the Shaggy Dog remake starring Tim Allen and National Treasure 2, were hired to write a new draft, becoming writers number 5 and number 6. Which, this is the trend for the next couple years, is that they went from Oscar winner David O. Russell and acclaimed indie director Neil Berger to the Shaggy Dog people. There's a series here where they're not going to hire anyone good for a while.
Yeah, this is like 3 years have elapsed at this point. This is like around the time that Uncharted 3 came out.
Yes.
By this point, so.
All right. In June of 2013, Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, at a press junket for their film This Is the End, revealed to IGN that they'd been asked on multiple occasions to write the film, but declined every time due to being fans of the game and not being able to figure out a way in. Do you want to read the quote here from Evan Goldberg, Sean?
It's just going to be Indiana Jones, says Goldberg. If we could figure out a way to make it not Indiana Jones, it'd be awesome.
So I like the candor from Rogen and Goldberg there.
I like that it only took to 2013 to someone say the obvious truth that if we made it into a movie, it just would be Indiana Jones and it wouldn't be good. And as soon as someone just said those words out loud, everyone should have just stopped trying to make this fucking movie. Because that's the most true thing you could ever say about an Uncharted movie.
All right. In February of 2014, Seth Gordon, the director of the Vince Vaughn Reese Witherspoon vehicle Four Christmases and the Baywatch remake from a couple years ago, was hired to direct from a script by David Guggenheim, who has no Wikipedia page. Director number 3 and writer number 7. It is now scheduled for release in June of 2016. In November 2014, a brief break from hiring people who have no business making movies, Mark Bowl, the journalist and acclaimed writer of The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30, was hired to write a new draft, becoming writer number 8. Where the fuck did that come from, Sean?
Yeah, that's a way, way darker take on Uncharted, where Nathan Drake's going around and fucking torturing people to figure out where the treasure is.
All right. Somewhere around here in 2014, Mark Wahlberg moved on from the project. The part was offered to Chris Pratt, who was just becoming famous for Guardians of the Galaxy, who turned it down. So
I think it's just amazing that somehow Marky Mark was vaguely involved with this whole time.
Oh, it gets less vague. We have stories. All right. June 2015, Seth Gordon leaves the project. In April 2015, this is when it gets real good, guys. Because this is when the entire David Guggenheim draft, along with emails related to the production, are all leaked in the North Korea hack of Sony Pictures. If you don't remember, this is when Sony made that movie The Interview with Seth Rogen and James Franco, and North Korea got really mad because the movie shows Kim Jong-il getting killed. And so they hacked Sony Pictures and released a bunch of shit, and part of that was all the documents about Uncharted. So this is where a lot of my research went, Sean.
All right.
First off, here are some things we learned. Columbia Pictures VP Jonathan Caden wrote a long email to Amy Pascal, the head of Sony Pictures, outlining how he thought Uncharted would be better than National Treasure, the Nicolas Cage movie, which in his words was softer and sillier than the Uncharted film, more intense, and with a better romance. It's also worth noting, he wrote, that the Nate and Elena relationship is a lot sexier and more fun than the Nick Cage-Diane Kruger relationship in National Treasure. A lot more! Double exclamation point. The romantic tension in National Treasure was pretty lame. There was an entire long email where this dude was just obsessed with comparing it to National Treasure. Which, fucking I love.
Yeah, that's, I mean, they're not totally unrelated, but Uncharted and National Treasure, it's not the same thing. Although I think he's right. I think the Nate and Elena relationship is a lot sexier and more fun than the Nick Cage Diane Kruger relationship in National Treasure. So it's he's not wrong there.
Yeah, because the idea of Nick Cage having sex with anything is fucking disgusting.
Yes.
All right. Sony Pictures creative executive Adam North wrote in an email comparing the film to the Angelina Jolie Lara Croft movies and the Dan Brown Da Vinci Code books, both of which are just... Those are fantastic, right, Sean? That's what you want to compare your movie to.
That's exactly it. Also, again, with the National Treasure thing, Uncharted is not the Da Vinci Code. They're related, but they're not the same thing. And so it's obviously the Lara Croft connection is obvious for many reasons, but no, it's not like the Da Vinci Code. Don't do that.
He also wrote in an email, Drake needs to have more aching questions about his past and where his family comes from so that this discovery that he's related to Francis Drake has personal meaning for him. Right now it's a surprise, but it doesn't feel emotional. Sean, what does that tell you about the people making this movie?
That they had no idea what the fuck the games are? That's not... No. Mm-mm. I mean, to his credit, at least fucking Uncharted 4 was not out yet, which did... resolved the entire Francis Drake thing in the best way you possibly could. So they didn't know that someone had already fixed this entire problem, which was a problem that didn't even exist in the games in the first place. So
I just love that they're like, no, he has to be more angsty about his past because we don't have enough characters in movies who are angsty about their past.
Because if you were vaguely related maybe to Francis Drake, of course you'd be just riddled with all these intense personal doubts and questions about the fact that you're related to someone 300 years ago.
Yeah. Let's see. This is one of my favorite details. While Mark Wahlberg was still attached to the project, he forced several changes to the script, chief among them dialing back the film's buddy movie status with Sully to make it more Drake's story. Mark Wahlberg was insecure about the amount of Sully and wanted it to be more about Drake.
Did any of these emails shine any sort of insight onto what the fuck they meant by Nathan Drake's uncle?
No,
because I'm assuming that when they said Robert De Niro was playing his father, that's supposed to be Sully. That's
I don't think so. I think they literally meant they wanted to do a family thing. I don't think Sully was going to be in the movie for a while.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
My god.
Okay, a January 2014 email from Seth Gordon to Amy Pascal wrote in all caps, I love this project, period. He dropped out a year later. A May 2014 email revealed the company wanted Chris Hemsworth to play Drake now, and they also considered Channing Tatum. Which, I love Chris Hemsworth, I love Channing Tatum. They are as far from Nathan Drake as it is possible to get.
Yeah, exactly the wrong kind of movie star for Nathan Drake.
And at some point, Mark Wahlberg was offered $15 million to play Nathan Drake.
Which also, talking about people who should be playing... I think we just passed over that observation, which maybe just should be said, that Mark Wahlberg is also not someone who should be fucking playing Nathan Drake.
I would take a fucking slug on the side of a road in a little fedora playing Nathan Drake before I'd take fucking Mark Wahlberg. Fuck that. All right.
Yeah.
Moving forward, August of 2015... We have not yet graduated high school or college yet, Sean. In August of 2015, Sony pushes the release date back to June 2017, and 1 year later, in July of 2016, they hired Joe Carnahan to write the script. He is now writer number 9, and in September, the movie is removed from Sony's schedule entirely. In October of 2016, Sean Levy, the director of Night at the Museum, and he would later go on to direct a lot of Stranger Things, which I think has kind of redeemed him in a lot of people's eyes. He was announced as director number 4, and Mark Wahlberg confirmed at this point to our old pals at We Got This Covered, actually, that he was no longer involved with the project.
This is also the point at which Uncharted 4 has now released as a video game. So
okay,
that's where we are on the other side of... Over here on the movie side, they're still pissing themselves. Here on the right side, they've just released, up to this point, the best Uncharted video game. So
yes. January of 2017, Joe Carnahan confirms on Instagram that the script is complete. This is when we learn the plan is for a young Nathan Drake movie starring Tom Holland, who has just become famous because of Spider-Man. In 2017, somewhere, Rafe Judkins, who also does not have a Wikipedia page, was brought in for rewrites. He or she, I'm actually not sure, becomes writer number 10. Then in July of 2018, this is important, there was the fan-made film that did star Nathan Fillion as Nathan Drake, because after 10 years of trying to play Nathan Drake and being ignored, Nathan Fillion got frustrated and got himself and Alan Unger, the director, to make a movie together. It's like that 15-minute short film. People liked it. Neil Druckmann from Naughty Dog tweeted out a heart emoji. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, it was a fun little, fan movie. Like, Nathan, tragically, at this point, Nathan Fillion has become too old, really, to play Nathan Drake. And so, he would have been perfect to play Nathan Drake back in 2009 when they had started this process, but now Castle is over. Now Nathan Fillion has kind of aged out of the role.
Yeah, I think they had Stephen Lang from Avatar as Sully, and that was pitch perfect casting. I loved him as Sully.
Yes, yeah, that was very good.
All right, so that's 2018. December 2018, Sean Levy drops out of the movie. In January 2019, Dan Trachtenberg, who was the director of 10 Cloverfield Lane, which is a good movie, signs on as director number 5. And in March 2019, we learned that Chris Hemsworth, Matthew McConaughey, Chris Pine, and Woody Harrelson are all on the shortlist to play Sully, which, okay, Woody Harrelson makes sense. Matthew McConaughey would be really out of left field, but I could kind of see it. Chris Pine, I actually think, would be the best possible casting for Nathan Drake at this point, and I don't know what Chris Hemsworth is doing there. So that's a very weird list.
Yeah, that's a list of 4 very different actors. It's weird to think of all 4 of these actors being considered for the same part. Like, I can see Chris Hemsworth and Chris Pine being considered for the same part, but neither of them should be anywhere near the running for Sully. Like, they're not the right age. They're not the right... Like, I could see Chris Hemsworth in, 10 to 15 years would be a great Sully.
Yeah.
Not right now.
Also, how... Chris Pine, he would be a great Nathan Drake. He's got the right build. He's got the right kind of, quippy energy. But, I mean, they're doing kid Nathan Drake now, but, that's weird that they never thought of that. In June 2019, they dated the movie for December of 2020.
That was ambitious.
Yep. And then just this week, on August 22nd, Dan Trachtenberg exited the film. It is still scheduled to go into production in early 2020, but that's obviously not going to happen if they don't have a director. So far, the movie has had 5 directors, 10 writers, and a very embarrassing set of leaks. Sean, movies go through development hell all the time. This is a special level of development hell where I feel like everyone involved should be put in a padded cell and made to just think about how bad a job they've been doing for the 3 or 4 years they almost made a Marky Mark Uncharted movie.
Yeah, the thing that's sort of surprising about this, because a lot of these, the individual elements are things that I had heard over the years of, Mark Wahlberg being involved in some way when they moved to wanting to do to the Tom Holland young Nathan Drake. I think we talked about that briefly on the podcast. But when you lay it out like this, it surprises me how much they legitimately seem to have been trying to get this movie made. In my mind, oftentimes these video game movie projects that get announced and never go anywhere, stuff like BioShock, they've been talking about making a Metal Gear Solid movie forever, those kinds of things. It always feels like someone has said it. Maybe there's a half-written script somewhere, but it always feels like nobody is earnestly actively trying to get the movie made, or at least nobody in a position of influence is. Here it feels like they've legitimately been working very hard to try to get this movie done for the past 10 years, and they just have no idea how to do it. It is just very clear that somebody saw hey, we have the rights to make the movie. We could make the movie. Boy, Uncharted 2 sure blew up, and it was a super successful game, sold a lot, it won a shit ton of Game of the Year awards. That clearly Uncharted 2 was obviously the spark that set this off. And so they're like, well, shit, let's try to make this movie made. And they just couldn't do it. They couldn't figure it out.
Actually, before we get any tweets about it, the BioShock movie almost got made like it got pulled down right as it was about to start shooting. The stat I'm seeing, it was 8 weeks away from shooting when it was abandoned, and it was because and that one was being done by Gore Verbinski, the guy who made all the Pirates movies. And the studio got cold feet because of the R rating, and Verbinski wouldn't back down, so they shut him down. They had like sets built, and they had a whole cast and everything. So that one got really close.
I think my point is that like that's probably true of most of these. It's like there are probably for most of these like these movies that have like that you hear those rumors about, and like there are like weird random announcements every other year or so that have been going on for 10 plus years. It is probably true that there have been like different points where that movie got so close to about to being made, and then something happened and it just didn't quite go. And then the longer that goes on, the more this sort of spirals together into this just complete fuck circle of incompetence. And then,
it's very, very clear, like with the Flash movie, any of these you could do for these like long gestating projects. The reason they're so long gestating like this and there's so much turnover is nobody has any central idea what movie they want to make. And that's why nothing ever gets made, is because there's no vision at any point. It's just, this is an IP we own that is nominally popular, but they have nothing beyond that.
Yeah, so they just keep on like throwing different people to direct and write it and to star in it, and just without ever having anybody like really committed or caring about it, because there's just clearly no... I mean, obviously for most of this, there was just like no sense of what they even thought an Uncharted movie would be. I don't think it's not until they like the idea of the young Nathan Drake thing that at least a premise for the movie seems to have crystallized in some way, even if that premise is not one that I'm interested in. Like, when you say young Nathan Drake starring Tom Holland, I can visualize that movie. Anything up to that point, I have no idea what they're even talking about. When you say Marky Mark in a movie where you have Robert De Niro playing Nathan Drake's father and Joe Pesci playing his uncle, I literally don't know what movie you're making. I don't know what you're talking about, and I've played all of those games multiple times.
Yes. All I gotta say is, I think Naughty Dog needs to come out of Uncharted retirement and make Uncharted 5, where Nathan Drake discovers his long-lost father and uncle, played by Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci, because I want that in the game. I want Joe Pesci CG modeled in mocap. I want the footage of Joe Pesci on the Naughty Dog mocap stage opposite Nolan North. I want that fucking game. I don't want the movie, but I want the game.
I want it to be that, but it's like they basically punk Nolan North, and Nolan North doesn't know that that's what it is, and then like he just shows up in like the mocap studio, and they get everything set up and start filming, and then Joe Pesci in the mocap suit just walks into the studio, and Nolan North has to just improvise a scene now with Joe Pesci as his uncle. That's what I want. All right,
we will be back next week with something. It'll be Weekly Suit Gundam. It'll be a main show. We're not sure yet, but you're gonna find out, so stick around.
I've got to go grade some papers.